I think we're good to go, man. Uh,
I'll read something. I can write no more words until I speak of a particular word, a vexing word, a word that seems stuck with us like a scrap of double-sided tape. Is that balanced?
balance is good. Balance is good.
Move a little closer, yeah.
Okay,
How you been, man?
man. I've been well. I've been. Life is fine. It's very rich in many ways, and
That
it's
means that you're suffering.
well, yeah, plenty of that going on, man. But it's very beautiful too.
Yeah.
Um, but God, it's been crazy, man. How about you? How about you? What's going on?
I'm good. Um, these are the golden years for me, and a lot is being accomplished in my life, and I'm where I am right now is that I've just written this memoir, which was 5 years of arduous work. And to anyone listening, I would like to say that if you'd like to torture yourself in the most intimate and profound possible way, write a memoir, folks. That was very difficult to do. I'm also putting out a release of all the music that I wrote for the larger spiritual community over the last 50 years called Singing the Sacred, which means collecting a whole bunch of music from different choirs singing on different recordings, plus new things that we recorded recently that have been written in the last 10 years, and putting it all out with a score and notes of traffic for the conductors and notes about the texts and the origin of the pieces. And the scores are all in finale, and there's a couple of CDs worth of really beautiful music. But it goes back 50 years. It's a retrospective. And when I get done with that, which will be in a few months, inshallah, I'm up to the last 10 years, and believe me, that's refreshing. I'm done with the old stuff. I don't have to deal with it anymore. I'm now dealing with music that was actually about the last 6 years. There's 6 or 7 recordings that are bubbling, and some of them are recorded and almost mixed and waiting to be released. Others are in various stages of being produced, and but the music's all there. There's 3 records that the musicians are now learning. 2 big
Wonderful.
records for Noam Blemish and my student virtuoso, and my other student virtuoso is Kirk Whipple, who helped me with Harmonic Experience. And I wrote a piano sonata for him, and he's preparing that. So those are all, and I set some poems by Jane Hirschfield, and those are being set to be recorded and played. And there's other things too with my trio, and another set of pieces that I wrote for Noam. There's actually 4 of those in the works. So there's a lot to do.
Keep him busy. Yeah.
It's all recent work. And the problem is, I feel like I'm at the top of my game, Jacob. The composing just gets better and better. I'm 86, looking at 87, and I have lost a step in my chops, in these chops, for sure. But the composing just seems to get more savvy because, I don't forget anything, and it just keeps better. I just keep learning stuff. So great. So I keep going. I can't get the performances of the CDs. Once you write a piece, it takes something like 3 months to a year to write a piece, and then it takes 10 years to produce the damn thing and get it right.
Yeah.
And they pile up like airplanes waiting to land.
It's the long game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the long game, man. And I'm being really productive right now, and I have people capable of playing complex music that are willing to record what I play. So, and there's my trio with percussionists George Marsh and Jennifer Wilsey. So it's cooking, and I have a beautiful marriage with a beautiful woman. Hey,
So you can't complain. That sounds good to me.
just celebrated 37 years of marriage, and I have enough money, not a lot, but enough to face disaster if disaster strikes, and I'm ready to die right now. Oh,
Well, don't
Jacob,
do that. Don't do
is
that.
is this heaven?
Yeah, I wonder. God.
So that's the nutshell of my life. I've lived long. I've had lots of stories, as you may have recently read. How'd you like my book?
It's wonderful, man. I'm about 3/4 in. And yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it very much. I'm thinking about your idea of transmission and teaching teaching people as opposed to teaching music, right? Teaching the human being. Oh, and I can't help but not, reflect what I'm reading about your life onto my own life, and yeah, your journeys and wonders, and I guess the blunders I'm going through, and thinking about the last time we spoke. I mean, that was maybe at least 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
I think we had a casual conversation
Yeah,
since then, but not really
yeah,
talk.
not
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, you know,
My
I'm re.
my book has made him think.
It sure has. I mean, I've been sitting with Harmonic Experience recently too, and teaching those ideas and seeing, even as I get more, yeah, involved in teaching professional musicians and adults, and seeing the sort of the vacuum of important knowledge in you know in a lot
That's
of
a good
in
way
a
of
lot of
saying it.
musical worlds. I mean, it's almost it's yeah, it's almost sometimes disheartening, and but it's also fun to to spark an insight on something so fundamental in a professional violin player or something who's been
I have
gigging
no idea. No idea what's happening. All right.
yeah, there's no understanding of some of the I don't know, what I think what would should eventually be taken for granted or taken as essential understandings of how we approach music making or understand music making.
When I grew
uh,
up, we were singing in grade school, and every day there was a music period. There were pianos in the classrooms. The
yeah,
teachers knew how to play simple stuff, children's songs,
yeah.
and I would play for people because by the time I was 8 or 9, I could play, and uh, it was just part of the day. It's totally gone.
Well, see, when I was a kid, I remember I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I had to audition for the school singers, to which I was thoroughly renounced and rejected from the school singing. And that sticks with you. That
Yeah,
sort of
well, absolutely. It doesn't
yeah,
take much of that. The voice comes out of the throat chakra, this very, very narrow gate right here. And it's if you know how to sing, or even if you're singing in the shower, any note that comes to you, the joy of singing of that's what Rumi calls this praising sound coming out of this very narrow channel. The whole body just brings forth this energy, and it's so small. It takes about 3 seconds to close it for life when
mm,
you're a kid and your brother says, "Shut up, dummy." That's that.
yeah,
What makes you think you can sing? The teacher said, you sit over here and just make your mouth move like this, but don't sing.
Yeah.
Or you just be a hummer. Or you call that music? It's not. And kids that have that as early experiences, they think they're tone deaf.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, and it takes a lot to unlock that trauma. It's
Yeah.
very easy to traumatize this chakra.
Yeah. It definitely closed up my voice and sort of led to a hyper compensation by just trying to become as good a musician as possible, but the voice is still, it's something I do in private, it's something I do.
Well, good. Just do it a
But
lot.
yeah,
The
I,
the thing that quote musicians as opposed to quote singers, the distinction is made. Um, Alas, is that musicians play a machine.
mhm,
We all do. We play machines. Drummers with sticks. I got all the notes tuned in the factory there. And you got a guitar, and they got the frets, and the violin has the strings, and everything's been invented and made and handed to you. The little instruments like guitar, especially acoustic guitar, and stringed instruments, the violins, they're close to you. And so at least, you can hug the instrument. I can't hug my instrument. Wind players, at least they're going a little bit this way.
yeah,
But nothing is like just making your body vibrate,
mhm,
which is, and no machines, none of this, none of that. Just
yeah,
sing. And it's just one of civilization's discontents. It's one of the things that we lose when we're civilized. Like as soon as they invented the wheel and the horse and the train and the car and the jet, there go your legs, man. When's the
yeah.
last time you walked 20 miles to see your friend? Well,
I
some people
mean,
do.
yeah, maybe not ever, man. It's been a long time. Maybe not ever.
Well,
Um,
the average person is living in his condo or his apartment building. Just it's all done by machine. You lose this. You lose. No wonder we're raping the earth. We've lost connection. So singing is a way of getting a lot of that back, especially communal singing, which is as close as most of us have to tribal ceremony.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just in the book I was reading about the Sufi choir and yeah, the power of that and the power of, yeah, just these meetings of these intercontinental meetings of spiritual teachings, musical practice, and how important that is, and how, yeah, we're trying to rehumanize or re-embody,
yeah.
how important that is. Um, but it's there's a lot of gravity pulling towards the disembodied or the
No, wait a minute. I want to put this on TikTok. Okay. Oh, look,
yeah,
I got a text from Santa Claus. Oh, Charlene, I want to. Oh, I won't read that.
yeah, and it makes us incoherent as a people. We're
Oh, when's the last time you talked to a 15-year-old?
so well, that I teach. It's been maybe a month, but I teach them, and it's yeah, you learn a lot, you see a lot. I don't. I make them put the phone away. The phone
On,
can't be
yeah,
nearby.
yeah, that's
You
right.
know.
On the other hand, 6-year-olds know more about computers than I do, and that's for sure.
Yeah, that's been my story for a long time too.
Hang on, I have to chase the cat. Come on, scat, 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 scat. My cat wanted to be on TV.
Yeah. Huh. Well, Alaudin, I mean,
So ask me a question about my book.
I got a question. I mean, reading it and seeing your arc of like, okay, very gifted boy, young man, wind up working with Stan Kenton, find your way into Duke Ellington's hotel room, discussing music over ice cream, and your arc of, getting involved in Sufism, the Sufi choir, study of the music of India. I guess what is pulling you? What is guiding you to arc these worlds? Why were you never satisfied in a single world? I mean, I suppose what pulled you through so many worlds and continues to pull you through so many worlds?
Well, it's only one world.
Mhm.
And you can compartmentalize it in a dozen or a dozen or a million ways, and say there's this kind of music, that kind of music, this kind of people, that kind of people. There's white people, red people, yellow people, brown people, black people. Not many purple people, but if there were, I'd find a way to probably enslave them. So, I mean, the other view is to take experience as it comes, and part of that experience is your own sense that what you're learning might have a sense of completion within its own conditions and boundaries, but that there's more than that. For instance, when I was studying jazz, it was really, I started to study seriously jazz when I was 13, and by the time I was 21, 22, I had a good career in it, and I became increasingly dissatisfied, increasingly interested in classical music, which I could play badly at the piano because, I studied piano for 10 years with bad teachers, and so I could play my Mozart sonatas and my Schubert, my Schumann pieces and so on, and not much Bach. And then I just realized that there was a lot of music that I loved. I hadn't the slightest idea how it was put together. No idea whatsoever, which is the case for most music. What is that? It's beautiful. I want to be able to do that because it's beautiful. It affects me so much. I'd like to be in that world. And I was reading a score by Stravinsky, as a matter of fact. I had a record of Bessel la Fée, which is ballet by Stravinsky, and it was gorgeous to me. I bought the score, I read the score along with the recording, and then I went to the piano, and I just had no idea what was going on. I don't understand how this works. I hear it, I can play the notes, but why is that so beautiful? And so I was at the University of Chicago, a graduate, and one of the teachers there was named Easley Blackwood, who was a direct disciple, a minion actually, of Nadia Boulanger, who was the great French teacher of the Eurocentric tradition. And I learned figured bass. I learned how music actually goes. I learned all the stuff that's in my book, except the central theoretical part, which I figured out for myself from many, many sources. But part of my secret is that I don't have a really good natural ear. Intuitively, I was always the last person in school to learn the song. And when I was conducting choirs, everybody would learn songs that somebody came to teach. I was the last one to learn it until I saw the score, and then I could sing it fine. It was always I needed my mind. I have a good ear, but not an extraordinary. Well, it's pretty good now, but it's trained. I didn't come in that way. A lot of people, they sing in choirs, they sing in tune, they carry their part. They never occurs to them to sing any other way. I had to learn all that stuff. I had to study music that's in tune for decades before I began to really understand what the body does when it sings and when it hears. First place, nobody understands it, but you come to a balance between your natural ear, your hearing, things that you can just hear. Now I hear complicated music in my head. I'm trained, but it took a long time to get there. I just don't have that natural ability. And I know I know a lot of works by a lot of very wonderful composers like Beethoven and Bach and Mozart and Bartok and Stravinsky, and it's just astonishing how beautiful it is and how little is known about how that works. So I had to learn it in order to go into that world. So I was always looking at anywhere, any place I thought that I saw beauty. I wanted to be in that world. And in order to be in it, because I'm an egghead, I had to have a balance between my heart and my mind. And so, and every single theory book or theory class, including Easley Blackwood, who was a great maven of musical theory, wrong, but great, didn't answer my questions. I want to know why. That's gorgeous. I want to know why this is gorgeous. I can do it now. I couldn't always do that.
But so what is the answer? Why?
The answer is you be inquisitive for many, many, many decades, and you keep learning and you keep adding on. You don't forget what you learned, and you're assiduous your entire life about being a musician, and that's the way you get to be a musician. However, there's an awful lot of musicians, like 92%, who open their mouths or pick up their instruments, and they're fabulous. How much music do you think Jimi Hendrix knew? Even people like Miles Davis, they're very limited understanding. They don't need it. They're geniuses. They have incredible ears. I don't believe Miles Davis, but there's a lot of people like that. Not in classical music. You have to know what you're doing. It's too complicated. But in hot music, music that isn't on the page, as opposed to cold music, which is on the page, intuition leads the pack. And musicians who are extremely well studied and don't have the soul, sorry.
Yeah.
Can we leave now, please? So, that's for me, I needed to study in order to do what I do. I pretty much play what I hear now, and I hear a lot of stuff. I know how it goes. But I know what the capabilities of my instrument are. But there's people that, like Bud Powell. He knew a lot, but he didn't know as much as he was playing. Well, who does? I don't know as much as I'm playing, really. But people like Bill Evans, pretty studied, but geez, I mean, how about Keith Jarrett? He's pretty studied, but...
Well, I think that's the fun, is you learn enough, you keep learning, and then allow the play instinct to take over.
And if it doesn't, you're in trouble. If it doesn't, you'll never make it. There has to be a point at which you forget everything you know. And when I'm playing, I don't think and I don't know. I'm listening, so. But it becomes ingrained. So how long does that take? How many lives you got?
Yeah. Well, I feel, you can always play. You can always play, but it, what do you have to play with? And if you haven't studied much, you don't have much to play with. I mean, you might whatever you have to play with might be enough to sustain you for the entirety of your life.
Well, that's right, and that's true of like country singers and people that just pick up styles that have their you learn everything in this style. You know, I was a pretty good jazz writer when I was 21 years old, and I could have been better, but I was kind of getting the way that big band music works, and it wasn't enough to hold me there.
Yeah,
It wasn't
not enough.
it wasn't enough to hold the music itself there because it evolved past that and it became other things. I'm sorry to lose big band music though. That was pretty much of a hoot.
You know, you want to hear something funny? Is a number of years ago, I had sort of a Duke Ellington playlist on, and the album Piano in the Background came on, but I didn't know you were a part of it at this time. I didn't know you had arranged
Couple of pieces there.
yeah, a couple of pieces. And I'm listening, one of them's on. Remember at this time I didn't know you had arranged it, and it was Don't Mean a Thing.
Hmm.
And I at the time I didn't even know it was Duke's band. I didn't know who it was because it was just streaming through the
Yeah.
phone, just going.
Well, once you hear the piano playing, I mean, especially on that track, is just incredible.
It was so incredible that I thought, oh, this has to be like a modern interpretation. This must be someone who's alive listening or playing this. And then also the arrangement, I was like deeply, deeply impressed. And then I look and this was recorded decades ago.
1961.
Yeah. And then lo and behold, I see your name. That made me laugh.
Here's a picture of Duke, not at that moment, but taken a year after that by a brilliant photographer who hung out with Duke Ellington named rats. I got to look him up because I mentioned him.
Yeah.
He was a great teacher for me and for many, many, many others. Parks was the guy's name. I'm sorry to have to do this, but I gotta look up the credit because I meant Gordon Parks. That's his name.
The photographer?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's a well-known photographer. That's the only. There's about 70 photographs in that book, and that's the only one I had to pay for. But I was glad to pay for it. But half of them are taken by me.
Right on.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the book it took you a very long time to write down your story of your meeting with Duke Ellington. And
Yeah, I didn't want, when you write something, those of you who write and who does not, as soon as you write something, it crystallizes. Every time you remember something, it changes a little bit. So the story, you think you're telling the same story, but it morphs gradually over time. So if you tell, over 50 years, if you tell the same story 3 times a year, or whatever, that is had all that time to evolve. A little mutation here, a little mutation there, and then you have a monster at the end, maybe. And so that story lived in me, and I didn't want to write it because I didn't want it to crystallize. I wanted to keep having meaning for me. This is the in the book. The chapter's called "The Interloper." That would be me. The backstory is I was writing for Kenton, and I earned that job. I worked very hard in high school and college to study so I could write for him, and he recognized that. He hired me, and I wrote a good album for him, and it was a win-win all around. And when I was done with him and he was done with me, I said, and this is chutzpah, man. I said, would you write a letter to Duke Ellington? 'Cause I'd like to work for him too. Total ignorance on my part. I hadn't the foggiest idea, but I can learn it. And he must have written a good letter. He probably said, could you take this kid off my hands, please? And so I was the youngest one in the band and the worst player, but I wrote really good charts, and I featured people on the band, so they put up with me. And I played trumpet, not bad, but these were monsters. These were really monsters. I couldn't do it. What? So, anyway, he must have written a great letter because I called Duke he was in Las Vegas. And he said, "Why, sure, you can write for my band." So he's doing a
That's
professional
amazing.
favor for Stan. So here's the story. I wrote some things that were white trash, basically. I was just trying to get the band to play my ideas about, putting Ornette Coleman and Beethoven and Duke Ellington in the same bag. It was just like really innocent in my behalf and ignorant not. And the band hated it. Duke didn't say anything, and I was in despair because I realized I had made a basic mistake. I had not learned the culture of that band, something I probably never could because I wasn't an interloper. That band is about slavery. It was, and it's about the absolute necessity of rising above the persecution that we put on black people. And there are some people that have the talent and the charm to do it. Duke did, and he had a successful band for decades and decades, and he did a lot to help the black people out of the mess that white people put them in this country. And so I just thought it was music, man. We all make music. And it was just, no.
Yeah.
In some very sublime way, that music is code. It's a code way of saying what the joy of blues and despair actually can be. And so, those people were great musicians and they recognized the kids. So
He was kind enough to
yeah, I wound up having to, because the hotel he was in Pittsburgh wouldn't serve white people.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So Duke said, he's my guest. It's the only way I could sleep that night someplace. So I wound up with Duke, and the restaurant was closed. So it was midnight by the time we got in there and started talking. You want dinner? Yeah. And the restaurant was closed. And they didn't have anything except ice cream. It's because the lock on the freezer didn't work. So what do you got? Strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate in 5-gallon drums. And so Duke said, "Send them up." And the guy said, "All of it, Mr. Ellington?" "Yeah, all of it." So we had a real conversation. And he just became my teacher. He said, "Look, why don't we're tired of some of our standards. Why don't you just pick a couple of standards and redo them for us?"
Mm-hmm.
This time I did my homework. I listened to a whole bunch of Duke Ellington with different ears now that I understood what was happening in that band. That was a band that was showing an almost unbelievably sublime gift outward to the American public.
Mm-hmm.
And what Duke did when he got the arrangements is he opened them up and he put a lot of piano music in between things. He shortened some things, he lengthened some things, and played them at much faster tempos than I had written. But what I had written was actually okay. And he made them into sublime music. It was don't mean a thing if it don't have that swing, and what was the other one?
I forget the title. Yeah.
It'll come to me. So anyway, there was 2 charts, and the band just really played really well. It was such a contrast to my trying to get them to play my music. I was trying to make something that was that fit into that world, and I knew enough to do it at the time. So that was lucky, and Duke was so kind to me. I mailed him off those arrangements. I didn't think anything would happen. 6 weeks later, Duke calls me and he says, "We just recorded 2 of your tunes for Columbia. I'm beginning to see the light," was the other one.
And how old are you at this point?
24.
Yeah.
And I got the records. I couldn't believe it because he's such a genius. He took what were just okay arrangements. He made real pieces out of them, real compositions. And there are a couple of shout courses that I wrote that were good, and the band just tears into it, and it's very powerful. So I felt that I had escaped my mistakes somehow.
Uh-huh.
Just sort of appropriating Duke's band for my ambitious career. Come on, Allaudin. Or
Young
Bill at the
kid. I mean,
time.
I'm thinking about who I was at 24. I mean,
Jesus. I mean, it was shameless. And he took me on.
Yeah.
And he showed me my error in the most gracious, conceivable way. And subsequently, I started to read what people had to say about Duke in his lifetime. And a lot of people had similar experiences, that he taught by not teaching. He just opened the situation so you could teach yourself, which is a very African way of teaching, which I have benefited from over the years. So I was lucky. I escaped. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
And I was, and the theme of the book is the transmission of wisdom. How does that work? What is wisdom, and how does it pass from person to person? And I'm telling that story not because it's about a famous man, but because what a wise lesson that was from him to me, to take something which was unconscious exploitation on my part and turn it into something of beauty for the world. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big heart, big mind.
Yeah.
To do that. Yeah.
And a big heart. Yeah. And a lavish man. He's spent a lot of money. He lived a big life.
So when did you decide you were sort of done with jazz?
Well, I wasn't ever done with it. I still like to play it.
Yeah.
I'm non-public. Well, at a hotel lobby, I'll sit down and play the piano, or I just like to play. And I enjoyed the American Songbook. I know a bunch of 300 standards. My God, I've been playing jazz my whole life, and but I can't say I was never done with jazz. Every note I write is jazz in some way. If I'm just playing, I'm actually hearing. I'm hearing it that way, even though it gets straightened out on the page. Everything I play is either like a jazz ballad and it's really melancholy and lonely, or it's a up-tempo or walking thing, and it's just the lessons about beauty that you learn never go away. You don't go on. You just carry them with you, and the bag gets both bigger and lighter as you go. Lighter because you've internalized everything. It's not baggage anymore. That's just who I am. It's the way I play, or the way I compose too. It's just the way it is. And the same thing is true of Indian music and Nubian music. I studied with Hamza El Din. It's all the same, and it's Mozart too, who happens to be my dad. Nobody knows that. W.A.M. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, William Allaudin Mathieu. I mean, come on, what are the odds? And so and that I know so many Mozart pieces. I love the piano concerti. I love the string quartets. It's so much. There's so many symphony movements I love, and I've internalized all that stuff.
Hmm.
It's just in there. It's just in there like jazz and Pandit Pran Nath, the North Indian master singer, and like Terry Riley, whose music I really listen to. Everybody, Hamza, all of my teachers, everything I know, it just stays, it sticks, you know. So when when you're done with a good meal, you don't say would say you're done with a delicious dessert, right? And you finished. You can't say, "Oh, so you finished with dessert, huh?" Well, no. I'm I'm working on it, and next time we'll reflect that.
Hmm.
And so it takes a long time to digest this stuff. Well, what I tell my students is the best revenge is living long. So
Sure.
take care
It
of
takes.
yourself.
Um,
It takes a
what
lifetime.
What are you seeing in your current students? You know, what are they what are they interested in? What are they, what are you seeing in the people who come to you, the musicians who come to you at this time?
Well, I teach a wide range. I will accept beginners, not too many at once, thank you, but I will accept beginners or amateurs who just want to play their songs, right? Oh,
Hmm.
I've written songs. Uh, the ones who don't really want to learn and benefit from information turned into experience, they don't last long. I don't fire people, but they fire themselves. I learned that from Duke Ellington.
Well, yeah, I like that too, but that's so bothersome. I work with people like that. Both in a teacher-student relationship and in a collaborative relationship.
Right.
It's tiresome.
It is.
Yeah.
But one in five of those people are going to develop into actual musicians. And it's very heartening because I don't care how developed somebody is. I care only about how somebody's developing. That's my
Right on.
work. It's my
That's
work.
cool.
And so, but I'd like to say that I have at least a dozen students and many, many dozens I've taught in the past that are really from jazz musicians like Art Landy to classical composers like Michael Ellison, and the list goes on. I got a lot of really good students out there, including some good theorists.
Right on.
A guy who's developed 53 tone microtuning, he's very interesting. Just too many to list. I kept a list of my genius students who got famous, and after a while, I just tossed it. And so it's very hard to generalize
Hmm.
because I don't really teach by subject. I teach the person,
Yeah.
and I go directly to. Here's what I think, and this is teacher to teacher. I'm talking. Music is a great digging tool. It's a spiritual digging tool to get a person to really examine their inner life because that's what music is. That's inner life, Charlie, right there. That's inner life. Where's the jazz? um, that's so inside. It's a very precious world, and when you know how to live there and use your whole self, you're a musician.
Yeah.
People
Can I?
don't people don't know how to do that, and so
Hmm.
that's the spiritual part. But it's a great psychological tool too, which is like a pre spirit. You have to deal with your ego before you can transcend it.
Hmm.
And so I've been teaching since I was 16. I've been teaching 70 years, and I can sort of spot what a student needs. It's a talent, you know, I'm sure you're developing this. It doesn't take long for the more a person tries to hide, the more they reveal. So you just go for that, and then you begin to see after sometimes a very short time what the person's cover is. And music exposes it, because if you're lying in some part of yourself, that just shows up instantly in the way you make music. And the reason we like musicians who are deep, a great concert pianist, a great blues singer, is because they're telling the truth. And they can afford to tell the truth because they've told enough of the truth to themselves. So how does that play out in curriculum? You know, what to assign the person, what to say, what to do. I teach for 2 hours, and sometimes we just talk for an hour, and then somewhere along in there, I'll know. Okay, I know what this. I know. Turn to page 164, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I'll know exactly what to give them that will take them the next step. But that's just comes from years of experience. So I can't really say except that my students do get better. They get really good. And if I'm not learning from them, I get bored. They'll drop themselves. If they're not teaching me, they're not going to last long.
Sure. So this is something that's been on my mind, and you mentioned the term a quote unquote a real musician or a genuine musician. What would you say that is?
Moi? Me? I said that? Well, I think a real musician is one who knows how to drop in. That's all. It doesn't have to be a person who's necessarily gifted. It takes on the definition of what we call music, when things are in tune and in time and the ideas follow one another. There's a narrative and blah, 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 all those things. But you have to be careful of boundaries, because a kid who's dancing, 3-year-old kid who's dancing in the living room and singing blah da da ba da da da, you know, it's like, or these days, bum bum ba bum 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 wah wah wah, air guitar and all the fancy hip moves, and I mean pelvis moves. So that's musical. That's the basic impulse. That's absolutely the basic impulse. And so it's hard to say. I can go to a conservatory graduate recital and say, start over, kid.
Yeah, you're making me think of the hyper civilization obstructing genuine musicality.
Well, once you monetize it, it gets very, very difficult. Once you have ambition and you monetize it, you really set parameters for yourself that sometimes are insurmountable. And there's more than one musician, believe me, that has quit being a professional musician because the strains that imposes on you of getting ahead of the next guy is extremely competitive. There's way more musicians than there are jobs, and the pay is minuscule, as we are learning now. We don't get royalties anymore, hardly. And so unless you're a big star, you don't get paid. So people want to be a big star, and that's partly this guy's fault. You know, you just the internet, you're a star for 3 weeks now. You can be a star for 3 minutes on TikTok.
Sure can.
And you can get a million hits and then with nothing.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's very, very bad for the collective psyche, and it tends to deaden the awakening of the inner life, which is what musicians do. So if somebody's awake and alive inside, and they're being honest with themselves, you can tell, and that's what I call musical, even if it might not be in tune or whatever. Like Sufi choir is a good example. It's just amateur singers, really. Nobody was a pro. I was a guy with a chop, so I was a pro, but I'm dealing with these amateurs, but they are so awakened inside because of their spiritual training that we managed at the end of a few years to make very complex music, very well performed in tune, well recorded. It was beautiful. We made beautiful records, and that taught me a lot. I mean, that redefined precisely it redefined what music is for me. But so did Duke, so did Dan Kenton, so did Life on the Road with the bus, and all these experiences. You to keep redefining it. As soon as I started Indian music, singing raga, I've been missing the point for my whole life.
Yeah. And how old were you when you started doing raga?
32 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd had a big professional life by the time I did that, and I just realized, oh, I never got down.
Back at square one, in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, square one.
Yeah.
Square one, and you do that for a year, and you understand how big square one is.
Yeah.
So, and then it goes on. It just keeps going on, man. I didn't write my first precocious as I was in theater music, which we haven't talked about, and in jazz music. What I really wanted to be was, composing big chamber works, and I didn't write what I consider a successful one until I was in my early 50s. It was a guitar quartet, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Yeah. San Francisco Conservatory, I had a little in there, and they, I don't know how the connection was made, but there's a good guitar quartet. And I know, one of my students was a student there, and he did his tutorial, his thesis, his graduate thesis, by recording this quartet of mine and chronicling the experience with his guitar quartet. And I don't play guitar, but when you're writing for 4 guitars, you can write a lot of single lines and a lot of things. I know what's possible on the guitar. If I get too complicated, it begins to be awkward, and the players look at me like this. I know, I don't play your instrument. But when somebody writes for piano who doesn't play the piano, I know 3 bars. I got it. So, it doesn't mean it's impossible, but you really should play the instruments to write for. I mean, through the orchestra. You have to have some sense of it.
Yeah.
And so I was 50 something, and okay, fine. There's a piece of chamber music that actually works. It took me that long to figure that stuff out. That's hard music. That has the best minds of the civilization in it. So you don't just say, "Oh, I'm going to write a string quartet."
Yeah.
I mean, some people do. Some people
That's it. Some people seem to just sort of have the gene or something, or but yeah, you mentioned in the memoir, just when you really look at some of the brilliant composers, it's just staggering how brilliant it's staggering.
And the thing is, I'm a good enough musician, so I understand the materials they're using. There's nothing that happens in tonal music that I don't understand. I know where the commas are, and I know how the notes all combine. I can do the math, and I can show you all the examples in the literature where such things occur, and I can show you the models in which they are demonstrated, and so on. On and on and on. I know that stuff. I wrote the book, okay? So, and knowing that somebody just has a few Lego blocks and some sequins and a couple of thumbtacks and a jigsaw and some driftwood, and they build this mansion. I said, "What? How'd you do that?"
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, listen. That's pretty standard stuff, right?
Sure.
That's like pre-conservatory. I mean, you're supposed to know that when you start to study. That becomes this. Excuse the mistake. What? How did he get that from that? What? He did.
Would you say composing is, are you in a more passive state when you're composing, or?
Totally. Well, when I'm studying, when I'm curious, when my mind is on fire, when I'm reading other people's works to see mine their mysteries, I am not passive. I'm passive in that I'm, well, both, you know, but I am aggressive. I'm taking in, I'm inhaling information and experience. I know how to do that. I like to do that. When I'm composing, I am one empty sieve.
Mm-hmm.
And the wind whistles through the sieve and it comes out the other end in the shape of the sieve. That's my piece.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just listening. Now, to be honest, there are times when I get to the end of the listening line and I say, what the heck did I write? And I look at it and say, oh, I see what this kid needs. You know, it needs to do this. This is too long. Go back and refer to that before going on, and it'll make sense. That's your problem. And so I say, oh yeah, I get it. Thank you, teacher. And then I'll go on and just listen. Mm-hmm. So it is a mixture between actively trying to figure out. It's like a painter steps forward and he just goes like this. And then he gets an idea and he does this. And at a certain point he stops and he walks across the room and he looks at his painting for a long time. He's teaching himself. And he goes like this. Ah, perfect. So it's a mixture, you know, it's a mixture of
A dialogue.
You know, the word passion is very interesting. It's from the Greek, passeo, and it means being empty.
Huh.
Which is interesting because we think of passion as whoa, full of your stuff, right? But actually, you are an empty container for the gods, and the gods come through you and inhabit you, and you do the work of the gods. Well, that's kind of true, actually.
I mean, the emptier you get, the more it can come through.
But you have to have done your homework.
I agree. Yeah.
So do I have a book for you?
Oh.
Let me ask you a question. The central idea of harmonic experience, which people don't know about it, there's somebody alive that doesn't know, is this book. It's a big, thick book about harmony. I showed it to my Indian music teacher when he was close to dying. He was very frail. He was sitting upright in a white linen suit. I came to visit him. He was holding court. And I said, here's my harmony book, Guruji. It couldn't have existed without you, and I dedicated it to you. And he was sitting there with his palms up like this, with palms in his lap, right? Mm-hmm. He's just sitting. He's very frail, very empty, very peaceful. He's fixing to die. So I laid the book in his hands. I'd be sitting down, but he was just like this. I laid it across his palms like that. And he just put his thumbs around the book like this. And he just went like that. And he put it down in his lap. And I thought he was going to bless it. And he said, "Oh, strong wrists needed."
It is a heavy book.
Yeah, it's 3.5 pounds. And okay, so the central idea of that book is in the middle, more or less, chapter section 3. It's about commas, right? And
Okay.
what a comma is there's many more than 12 notes in music, but there's only 12 notes in equal temperament. And so that was funny. I can't do it. There they are. There they are.
There they are.
Those 13. But there are many notes. I can sing about 20 something, and there's many more we can hear given context. So how does the 12 notes on the piano do that? I can make that into a G sharp. You'll know this. Now it was an A flat.
Mm-hmm.
And I could change horses in midstream by going. Okay, so you came. How does that work? That's the concern of the book. I wrote the book because I spent years trying to figure out why equal temperament works. It's wrong. Everything's out of tune. Even the fifths are wrong. The thirds are horrible, ugly, and everything follows suit. The various stages of ugliness. And yet I've devoted my life to being able to play the piano, and I'll sit down and play. Got a problem with that? I don't have a problem with that. What's your problem? It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how does that work? It doesn't make sense. So the book is devoted to what happens when there's an ambiguity in music. This is like language, like puns, right? So if you look at what happens when I'll tell you the following joke, really investigate what's going on with you. Here's the joke. My daughter found a list of 10 puns, and she sent it to me. She said, "Dad, I found this list of puns, and I know you like puns. I hope you enjoy it." So I read the pun down the list. The first pun was okay. Second pun was dumb. Third pun was a groaner, and they got worse and worse. By the time I got to the 9th pun, I was just like, what was my daughter thinking about? And the 10th pun was this: "I sent my father a list of puns thinking it would amuse him, but no pun intended."
So what happened to me?
No pun intended.
So
what was did you know that joke?
I'd have never heard this joke, despite many of your pun jokes.
Okay. So what happens when you make the connection between not a single pun in 10, delighted my father, and
I didn't get the intended.
No pun intended.
Gotcha.
Now you're laughing.
Yes.
That's what to look at.
Good.
It drew a blank, folks.
Yes, I did. It took a breath. It took a moment.
Well, okay. So what happened when you got it?
A new meaning, right?
What happened to you physiologically? Well, you laughed. According to a human, you laughed. According to my cat, you had a spasm.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
There was a release of energy.
There
Or
was, and it was kind of like this. Right? Well, that's what happens in music too when G sharp becomes A flat, but it's 1,000 times faster. It's not language. You don't have to go through all those circuits in the brain. It's immediate sound, and the context of this turns into, and suddenly something has changed its meaning. In language, it's usually a kind of groaner. I know some good puns, but
you got to laugh out of me on that one, man.
Oh, can I tell you another one? Not yet. So, in music, those things are puns because G sharp is in actual music turned just intonation tuned one way, A flat's tuned another way. I can make you think it's a G sharp by talking about 10 puns. I can make you think it's an A flat by context. That's an A flat. Let's see. Sorry. And if I do that midstream, so I go, let's see, I'll do it this way. This is a G sharp, this is an A flat. That's kind of rude, but if I give it the right, tell the joke right, it's not a spasm. It is a kind of spasm, but we don't recognize it. We don't laugh. We kind of swoon.
Yeah. It's a release or a relief, even.
Yeah,
it's very sensual.
It's very sensual, and we love it. And some of the most beautiful music in the world is in equal temperament, depends entirely on those different kinds of commas. There's several different kinds of ambiguities that arise. You can categorize them. It had never been done. Mathematically, yes. Musically, no. So I turned it into music and a pedagogy, and it turned out to be a kind of Rosetta Stone, and what has since the get-go become opaque in music theory, disillusioning matriculating classes after matriculating classes of college students and conservatory students suddenly gets clear. And not everything, but a lot gets clear when you understand the operation of those, how those ambiguities become resolved. So I'm explaining this, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'm explaining this. Now, that's what my book is actually about. And all the stuff that happens before that prepares you by assuming you don't really know how to sing everything in tune, or certainly don't know the math and the ratios, and explaining it and then making a chart, a diagram, so that it's completely, it turns it into music. I'll just flash that.
Sure.
So I wish I had a little card, but I don't see one.
I could when I edit this, Allaudin, I can just put it up.
You can just well, looky here.
You got it?
Yeah, it looks like this.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it as chords, but you can do it as notes. And so that you study all that really, really, really carefully, and then finally that's all prep work. Then you get to the third section out of 4, and you study the 3 commas that are functional in music. And it's a deep study. I mean, it really is heavy duty. You have to be pretty interested to get that. But it's the point of the book. That's why I wrote it. Because everything that precedes that has already been known and explained. Maybe not as well as I explain it, but it's been explained. And then you get to the commas. That's new. It was known mathematically, but not musically, not empirically as musical substance. And then there's the 4th chapter. He says, okay, now you know this stuff. Now let's go over everything you learned in school. Oops. And learn how to do that. Diatonic sequences, beautiful, beautiful cyclic sequences. Oh, how does that one go? Oh, I'll do it there. Here. Oh. heavy shit, man. That's very deep. And you make music with that, and it's pretty. And you can disguise it a billion ways, it's still working.
Yeah.
So then you study all the sequences that music goes through, notes has a very exhaustive list. That's the now. Do I ever teach that to one student? Not even you, but most of you got most of it. The most advanced students pick it up over the decades, and they use it. I mean, you have to be using it, and you're teaching it, which is a good way to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But a given student comes to you on a given day. What are you going to talk commas? No. Not unless they've shown interest,
Mm-hmm.
assiduous, constant interest for, a year or two. Then, okay, then you feed them a little bit. But
You got to be.
You can't teach beyond a person's interest.
Sure. I mean, you got to be practical, and if they have no interest in what you're teaching, there's no point.
There's no point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't collect the money. It's not right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that's why I say I teach people, not music. The music is what does this person need to make their life more whole for them, which may involve something strictly musical, which is great, I'm not a shrink, but it's easier to, or it might mean that there's digging work to be done. For instance, the person is really doing what they're doing, and that's the main thing.
That the person is really...
The person is not really doing what they're doing. They're not entirely doing what they're doing. Their concentration is thinking about themselves. Am I doing right? Am I making a mistake?
Yeah, sure.
All that stuff has to be addressed because it just gets in the way.
Yeah.
I get people to listen like this. Listen until it dies out.
Yeah.
Now do that for 3 other. Wait till it dies out completely. Now you pick your interval. They'll go, fine. And then they'll go, wait till it dies out. Now I'll say, okay, now play for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one ploy.
That's a good ploy, because a lot of musicians, and it's odd how divorced listening can become from music making.
Especially guitarists who are learning riffs.
I know, man.
Riff after riff. Look what I can do. Look what I can do. Look what I can do.
It's crazy, and it's very unsettling to be in a musical environment where there's no listening. It's like it's a unique kind of hell.
Well, yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like making love to a woman who's talking about her favorite TV series nonstop.
That's not gonna work, man.
No, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Yeah, it's also it's very strange to me that that the idea of the low prime numbers and the ratios are not taught to 5-year-olds.
Yeah, it should be part of a very, very basic curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think a kid, before you spring numbers on them, the numbers shouldn't come in until maybe they're 10 or 11. I don't think. Maybe 10 is good. But I think 9 is too early. You just want them to sing. You just learn songs. And I think interval is a dirty word. And to my students, I say, look, can we talk in terms of the harmony, not the melody? Because interval just measures scale degrees. But when you say a 3 to 2, that's what that is. And So I try to teach people sargams so they stop saying fifth and fourth.
Because it's a
So
misnomer. Like I tell students that an octave
it's
doesn't
not an
have
octave.
it doesn't have
Yeah.
much to do with eight. It has to do
No,
with two,
it has
or
something to do with eight
it
because
has.
we like heptatonic scales,
Mhm.
but in 99% of the pedagogy, they say there's seven tones in a scale. Well, that's just not true. There are seven tones sounds good. And what about five tones, Mrs. Marcy? Oh, well, that's primitive. Thank you.
What about your 53 EDO student,
Three,
right?
well, no, that's another story.
Right.
uh, yeah, I'll tell you why it's 53 because he uses prime 7.
Okay.
And the prime 7 generates harmony if you treat it right. And so, what you've never heard, prime 7 for your listeners, is the note that is used in blues, which is not. Sorry, no.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, have you ever heard music that modulates to the septimal seventh or the septimal third, and then that's the key you're in? No,
I
you have
guess
not.
not. Yeah, I guess
No,
not. Yeah.
it's quite it's enthralling,
Yeah.
and you can do it in 53 tone, but it's very impractical because nobody can sing 53 tone notes to the octave. 53 because that's 20. About 22 cents. It's about the didymmic comma and just about half the diasis. So all the commas are dealt with. It's the didymmic comma, the diasis, and the diasis. When you have tones that are 22 point something, whatever 53
Yeah.
divided by 12 is, cents apart, or whatever 1200 divided by 53 is.
And
So, yeah.
it makes other commas accessible as
You
well.
pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah. Well,
Mm. Seven.
the two commas. Oh, seven. Yeah, seven is in there.
Mhm.
It would be I forget just how it works, but one of the tones in the 53 is a seventh partial of something. So that this is so I think it's 5 cents off, which is
That's minuscule. Yeah,
yeah.
man.
I'm not really a fan of it too much because if you're going to go to that trouble, um, teach people to sing in tune, but where are you going to get an orchestra that is going to do that? And this guy writes orchestral pieces. He enters them into his computer. The computer tunes everything, and you can modulate in temperament in ways that you can't modulate in just intonation because you're eventually going to get stuff that there's no provision for that's out of tune unless you start to invent an infinite number of tones. Well, 53 isn't an infinite number of tones, but it's an awful lot. And so if you get, I mean, all people have been talking about this stuff for centuries. There's 31 tone tuning. And Easley Blackwood, my teacher, made the definitive microtonal etudes. Do you know that record?
I don't. Mm-mm.
Jakob and everybody else who might listen to this, Easley, Easley, Easley Blackwood, microtonal etudes.
Okay.
What my teacher did in the very early days of synthesizers on an NIH grant, went to Bell Labs and on 2 keyboards tuned up synthesizers so that he could play in 13 tone equal, in 14 tone equal, 15, 16, 17, all the way up to 24.
Hmm.
And then, genius as he was, and this was his master work, he wrote pieces for each one, demonstrating the tonal or lack of tonal properties of each one. 13 tone equal sounds like dog shit. 14 tone equal, there's something there. 15 tone equal is fascinating. In 15 tone equal, You know, diminished chords got 4 tones. Sounds kind of like that, except there's 5 tones.
Huh.
Ah. I mean, it's really crazy the things that happen. 16's interesting, 17's fabulous, 18, 19 is great. The fifths are a little sucky, but the thirds are within a cent of in tune.
That's
and,
cool.
And you can modulate to a tone that's just between E, that splits a fourth, so it's right between E flat and D, and you can really beautifully modulate there. You're in a key you never heard before.
Yeah,
and everything sounds, all major minor chords sound fine.
that's
So
fascinating.
a lot of people write in 19 tone, but he really showed the theory of it. He showed what's possible. He wrote these elaborate pieces. So, and furthermore, he wrote each one in the style of a well-known composer, because that particular temperament reminded him of some composer. This is Ravel, and this is Webern, and so on. So, 19 tone was Schubert, and he wrote a Schubert first movement of a sonata in 19 tone. It's fabulous.
That's cool.
So, even if you're not interested in all these tunings, and there's a lot of tuning heads, it's called microtonal, a lot of microtonal heads in the world, and, they're genuinely interested. But even if you're not, equal temperament plays tricks on your brain. And if you listen to the tricks that equal temperament plays on your brain, how 12 notes stand for a whole vocabulary of notes given context to do so. I can make the G sharp sound like a G sharp by giving no context, or I can make it sound like an A flat by giving you context. How that trick is played on you, context determines meaning. We know those tricks in equal temperament. You'll study music, you'll learn pretty much what's possible, all the models for what's possible. But we don't know what it sounds like in 19 tone or 17 tone. Same kind of trick. But in a very different world. And so you get to see that same trick being played on you in these different temperaments which sound foreign, except not. They are and they aren't. You recognize, but you don't. Or you don't recognize, like 13 or 23 tone tuning. It sucks. And it's just noise. We don't get any harmonic understanding from it. But some of them really do. So what those pieces are is a way of investigating with a very large vocabulary of tricks, what our response is to the equal tempered trick. And the equal tempered trick is that everything's a pun. Nothing is what it actually is. Everything is being made to sound like something that we're hardwired to understand. We're hardwired to get that simple ratio and that, and to some extent, yes.
What do you make of people who are going to have contention with the term hardwired to hear that way?
You say, that's just the way I'm describing it. Why don't you sing in just intonation and try to figure out how you know what you know? If you learn to sing it just third, and it makes you feel a certain way. What's that? What are you doing, buddy? How about an octave? How about a unison? You're singing a unison with somebody. How about two strings in tune? What's happening to you? How could you possibly know when they're not in tune? Oh, I hear the beats. Oh, yeah? Well, do you hear the beats in a fourth, and a third, and a sixth when it's in tune? It depends on a person's experience. If they're not interested in learning what it is to experience low prime ratios for themselves, they're not going to get the basics of music making. And a lot of people, in fact, most people don't give a holy flying shit, so fine.
I wonder,
what are we doing with our lives, you and me?
I mean, I was going to say, I wonder why I give a shit, because I do.
Well, what I care about is people going on to the next station of their lives. I want them to be able to grow on their inside and on their outside, the ability to deal with people in their profession. You know, like know what it's like to be inhabited by music. That's a good thing. If people are interested in that, I can usually get them to the next step. But I'm not interested in teaching a person a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who cares? Like, I keep telling students, everybody thinks that music, especially music theory, is a thing out there. Oh, I gotta pass Theory 103 or my parents will cut off my funds. It's a thing. It's an obstacle that you have to get over. You know? It's a thing out there. This is not true. Music theory is what you're made of. It's your blood and bones. It's your neuronal connections. It's you. It's we who make the theory. The theory don't make us. And as we don't make the theory. We make the music. And the theorists come along and try to figure it out and point us to our... But finally, the theory doesn't point to a thing out there. It points to yourself. Because it's bodies that make music.
Mm-hmm.
So it points to your body, your physical being in this life, which is capable of enormous feats of transcendence. But it's you, buddy. It's not a thing. So, and the title of my book, that theory book, is Harmonic Experience. And whose experience is it? I'll give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, none other than yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, I'm glad I chose to engage the rabbit hole of a musical life. But you know, the past few years have been pretty hard, man. You know, but I'm still very grateful for a musical artistic life. But it's definitely not predictable or stable.
I really do encourage students to teach, because as soon as they start to be able to feed their family because they're professional musicians, that's fine. Lovely trick if you can do it, but it's a pretty rare trick.
Yeah.
And it comes with a very, very high price tag, losing, for instance, your family that you're trying to feed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe yourself in the process. So it's fine, be a professional musician, but get a day job.
I mean, I'm teaching. I'm definitely
day,
teaching.
Yeah, the day job I suggest is teaching, because it's wonderful to teach people music, but I warn people about monetizing it, because as soon as you monetize it, if you're doing it to make a living or doing it to get famous, you're not doing it.
Yeah.
It's a diving board. It's a springboard. It's something that you're using. You're appropriating it for your ambition. But if you're doing it because it's a beautiful thing and you want to be in that world, fine, I can teach you something.
Mm-hmm.
No. I've never advertised for students. They come. Well, I do write books, so that helps.
I guess that's marketing in some way, but
no, it's word of mouth, actually.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Word of mouth. So everybody, buy my book. This is my mouth, my book, my word, good book.
It is a good book.
Yeah, the trouble with writing autobiography is that it doesn't matter how you disguise it, and I disguised mine. I said, well, this is about finding wisdom in a life of music, right? And that's a nice highfalutin. It's very, very, very laudable, Allaudin. Yes, very nice. He wrote that book. That's actually about me, 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 me. That's me, me. That's what autobiography is. You write about your life. But you have to make the distinction between what's valuable to people and what's just dirty laundry.
Uh-huh.
You know, and you know, what about my mother's? My mother who's been dead for 20 years. What about her bank statements? Am I going to write about that? No, not unless it's in some kind of context that helps people. You
Uh-huh.
know. And what about all my love affairs? No, thank you. That belongs between the two people. I tell people that I'll write about the women in my life if they can have the facing page. I'll tell my story here. They tell their story there. You flip the page, it's my story. It's their story, and only that's the only condition. Otherwise, no, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I think what's private between two people is private between two people. So there's a there's a lot of talk, but no action in my book
Oh,
about
there's some there's
about
some fun
sex.
action there.
There's a little story that demonstrates why I don't tell those stories.
Yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean it's not that's not what the book's about. And that's what fiction's for, because then you can tell those stories
that's
in
right.
fiction, right?
Well,
Yeah.
but it is a little disingenuous, I have to admit, because I've learned a lot from my spiritual teachers, from my music teachers, but I've learned the most basic life lessons from women.
Mm.
It's just not strangers on one hand, or my wife and partner for 40 some years on the other. You know, it's just like women. Women have the true wisdom, and guys are hanging around with their tongues hanging out, and we don't like that. We want to enslave the imposters. We want to own and possess them. That's a powerful impulse. But part of the reason is that we know that they have the womb. They
Hmm.
they're the mother, and the mother knows, and the guys
Well,
can
they like
hang
to think
around.
they know. We like to think we know, but
Yeah, well, we know how to exterminate people. We know how to
yeah,
enslave and torture people.
we're good at destroying things.
We're very, very adept at destroying things. We're good at destroying the earth. Very adept, and getting smarter every day. So we're good at, yeah. Men are really smart. They're smart enough to incinerate their planet.
Yeah, the plague of yeah, of in it's a plague of, I guess, intellectualism, or you know, you're making all of a sudden I'm thinking about theory that has no music theory that has no connection to the soul of music making is sort of another echo of that.
It's deadening, man.
It's
It's
terrible. It's pretty bad. Yeah.
and it's powerful too because although just cutting to the chase, institutions are in trouble. Academia is facing troubled times
Big time, man.
because they're not becoming universities so much as technical schools.
Hmm.
Because everybody wants to go into tech, really, or science, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Go into the professions, law school, this school, but the humanities are greatly endangered. And music is one of those, and so is literature, and so is art,
I know.
and so is philosophy, and so on and on. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
That the schools are in trouble or the institutions are in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I
Well,
think that I think it requires them to self-examine themselves.
I
The
like
one
that.
thing to remember about schools, even state schools, government schools, is that they're businesses.
Yeah, I hear you.
They're
Well,
all
you know,
bottom
you're
line businesses.
yeah, I mean, you're making me think of how you mentioned, the monetization of your musical art can be a soul stealing thing. And I also thought just the institutionalization of it can
It's
also be a soul.
very,
Yeah.
very, very problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so certainly I've seen in myself a strong drive to not institutionalize. I mean, I certainly thought about getting a doctorate, but it felt I didn't get a doctorate because I thought, well, how I'm not going to have any time to practice. You
Not
know,
only that, you won't necessarily make any money, and
well,
you'll have spent $200,000 getting the thing.
yeah, I know, So yeah, I mean, sadly, Mills is sort of falling apart, and
Oh, it's gone.
yeah,
It had the right idea, but starting around my time, it was the administration was, to be very kind, I'll just say inept.
uh
But it was worse than inept. I'm afraid, and I saw examples of that when I was there in the '70s, in the early '70s, and it wound up broke.
yeah,
So it was bought out by a much more straight-laced school.
big time.
Yeah, Jennifer lost her job there. So
That's too bad.
yeah, it's too
Yeah,
bad. I mean, they lose their good people.
yeah.
Yeah, David is hanging on, but you know,
So I mean, it just makes me think that I guess the best thing one can do is to keep making work, and I don't know, man, exist authentically outside of the institution. But it definitely is a solace for a lot of people, you know.
when I was teaching in both conservatory and Mills, the conservatory, John Adams was around,
Mhm.
and other people who were really gifted in the faculty. And at Mills, there was Terry Riley and Pandit Pran Nath and Blue Jean Turney. There's a lot of really good folks there, and I miss that. It was so collegiate, called college, and it was good. And the students back in the day when I was teaching them were actually interested. I had good classes. By the time I got to my third year of theory, I was the theory department. By the time we got to third year theory, I had a class of 10 students who were pretty good. I mean, promising. And some of them went on and did quite well. Some became folkies and did quite well. Nina Gerber is a local folk musician, really good. And that, I'm not so interested in their fame, but they actually internalized a lot of stuff. And I taught there a few years ago, and all they wanted to do is look at their phones. It was very discouraging. I just expected people. It's a theory course. It's a graduate theory course. You're supposed to be interested in this. It was graduate,
Mhm.
and I had a hard time. I was very, very disappointed because the kids, tonal harmony is kind of dead. People don't want to learn about it.
That's funny, man. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of value in the bridge building of the different sounds, the different musical worlds, um, and tonal harmony is alive in all of those things, but we're sort of ignorant of its fundamentals in a lot of ways.
Well, not only that, but in the culture, in the pop culture, it's not really a chordal music. It's a
I know.
rhythmic music, and it's
Yeah.
mostly pentatonic. And so it's all about texture, noise, produce serial values, and that's fine. But that's what happens when you monetize your music. It becomes a sensation. It's really hard to find. Oh, I want to hear Beyonce's new record. I haven't heard it yet.
I have not listened either.
I want to
I
hear
have
that.
not. Yeah. I've
But
been listening to the sound of the dishwasher. But
so what's that?
Oh, just the sound of the dishwasher. I
Oh,
haven't said.
I see. I thought it was I thought it was an album.
It could be.
Hey, Jacob, his idea. But actually, I thought you said the son of a dishwasher.
Ah, well, I'm sure there's a musician out there who's the son of a
Yeah.
dishwasher. Yeah.
So anyway, are we done?
We can be. We're about, yeah, we're over 90 minutes in. Any final things you want to share or say, Allaudin?
Well, I'd respond to questions or comments. Um, anything I said, I would just be rephrasing what we've said. We covered a lot of ground.
We did cover a lot of ground. Hmm. It's really good to see you, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I could do. I could read passages from my book or a passage from my book.
Why not? Yeah. What would you like to read?
I don't know. Let me find something. I have a copy that lays flat. I'm thinking. Well, the same thing is short, but I think I'll settle for it. Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
This is in a chapter about ontology and my personal ontology. Ontology is the subject of what existence is.
Mm-hmm. Being.
Being, yes. The subject of ontology is being. And at a certain point, I have to stop at that chapter. And it's in a place called vocabulary break. We're taking a break for vocabulary, okay?
Okay.
I can write no more words until I speak of a particular word, a vexing word, a word that seems stuck to us like a scrap of double-sided tape. I think that everything in this world is sacred or holy or spiritual, or that nothing is. I can usually shake off these terms and find others less exclusive. The especial sticky word, however, is spiritual. I guess folks use it to describe some aspect of refinement. True. But I find the term divisive. I cannot find a meaningful boundary between what is spiritual and what is not. Isn't everything both high and low, depending on the view and the lens? Or am I just being a bleeding liberal linguist? A century ago, Inayat Khan wrote, "The whole of life, in all of its aspects, is one single music. The real spiritual attainment is to tune oneself to the harmony of this perfect music. This lets me feel a little more comfortable using the word, and it is an ontology I can live with. The whole of life in all of its aspects is one single music. The real spiritual attainment is to tune oneself to the harmony of this perfect music.
Thank you, Allaudin.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to see you, man. Miss you. And
Carry on.
that's the plan.
Yeah, I'm very glad you're teaching. That's the best thing. I'm sure. If I was 15, I should have studied with you, man.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, Allaudin. I love you,
Okay.
man.
See,
All right.
love you. Bye bye.
Good night.
Good night. There.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Now, there it is. Enable original sound. Okay. Boy,
Awesome.
every Zoom meeting is different. Like everybody's got their own protocols.
Yes, they do. How are you doing, man? Good to see you.
Pretty good. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm well. Doing
Good.
well.
You look good.
Well, thank you. You too. You too.
You look like Kevin Spacey without the scandal.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for doing a round two, man. I finished your book, and yeah.
And it's time to cast a pod.
Yeah, indeed. And now a pod shall be cast. Indeed.
Replete with net.
All the things.
All the things. How's the piano sound?
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
How does piano sound when I'm reading or talking? I'm talking now. I'm talking about soup. Split pea soup, tomato soup, and French onion soup, all of which have been poisoned. How's that?
It sounds good. The voice is in the forefront, but I can still hear both things.
Oh, really? Okay, well, that's good. Okay, then what about this? If I'm talking about anything at all, including my old girlfriends, which I'd like to enumerate, one for every key of the piano. Yeah.
The piano was more there, for sure.
Well, it's 88. Embarrassingly, it comes out that.
Well, what's been on your mind, Allaudin? I think we spoke a month ago.
Well, I don't have much of a mind. I'm so busy being a producerial person. I am composing, though, and I'm investigating the properties of certain scales, and I'm in the sketch mode of a piece I'm writing. That's the way it looks before I've actually composed it.
Fun.
A lot of notes for possibilities. The scale is, this is the $64,000 question if you know this scale. It's a particular kind of mode. Any idea?
Was that 10? Was that 10 notes or 9 notes of the octave?
Oh, well, okay, but you said 10 first, so you don't get the duck or you don't get the $64,000, but yeah, it's non-atomic. And it's really amazing properties, too, so I'm...
Do you have two chromatic pairs in there. No.
Well, it's hard to say. It's like the easiest way to explain it is you play that's in C minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you play an E minor. And then you play in G sharp minor.
Huh.
Those cells. And you get a whole lot of stuff out of it.
Right on.
Yeah, and it's just curious. Actually, it's almost easier to approach it. What do you leave out? You leave out a D flat, a C sharp augmented chord.
I see.
Or actually a D flat augmented chord would be easier to see. D flat FA. But either way, and it's three augmented chords piled up like this. I like this sound. That's E aug, E flat down octave, and now E flat aug, and now D aug. That's it. Yeah.
That's fun.
That is fun, you know. But it also has amazing tonal properties. I'll play you one of those things. I need glasses. I discovered so much stuff that's tonally fascinating. And I haven't quite figured it all out.
I'm assuming you wrote a lattice for this.
No, I don't have to do that. I got one in my head.
There you go. Yeah.
And anyway, there's so much ambiguity. In the first place, it has a diesis in it, so what you can do in C, you can do in E, and you can do in G sharp, which is also A flat, so you can do it in C. You know, it used to be a pile, 3/3 on top of one another. You run right into equal temperament. But listen to this. Let's see. I'll start again. It's hard. Poof, I'm in E. And you do that again, and then you'll be here, and you do that again, you'll be here.
Very cool. So
it takes forever to figure these things out and to figure out why they work and how, you know. Also, you can just play in a mode like. Pretty.
it is pretty.
I was just doing it from E, and so from any note it's something, but it's from E it's or major.
And so, are you modulating between C and E and A flat as tonal centers?
Yeah, or between D. You can also do it from D, or you could also do it. You could do it from any of the pitches, and you get something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird. Of course, think about it. If you had 12 tones, well, yeah, right. But it's just, you know, I've resisted this stuff my whole life. It's kind of corny to write in octatonic scales at this point. On television, that's all you hear.
scary.
Yeah, but
Then I know. I mean,
there's a lot of things you can do. You know, Messiaen was fascinated by these things, and I sort of resisted it because it feels like a cheap shot. But it turns out this one is that's interesting enough to spend a few months writing a piece. So.
I mean, I don't know who said it, but you know, someone said everything's been done before, but not everybody was listening.
Well, actually, you can't do anything twice. That's my thinking.
Uh-huh.
I told that to my drummer. I was talking to, explaining to, I was retelling to George Marsh what I tell my students about composition and music generally. I said, you can only do one of three things. You can do what you just did. You can do what you just did or different. It's variation, right? The first one's repetition. It's variation. Or you can do something else. So when I said to George, you can do what you, let's see, how did that work? Oh yeah, you can. When I got to you can do the same thing but different. I'm messing up the joke because I forget. I think I conflated two things. Anyway, he said I can't even do the same thing once, which is actually very funny. So anyway, that's so. I don't think that's true. That everything's been done, unless you're just even in maudlin imitation. You know, that's corny, faux Bach or faux whatever, faux Miles, faux Coltrane. It's still something new. It just doesn't happen to be great.
Yeah.
You know? And so, everybody has something to say, and sometimes it's downright boring, and sometimes it's inspiring, but everybody does have something to say. So that's not an excuse to be lazy. Sorry.
I agree. No, I agree. And I also think it's. I mean, I think about with improvisation, like if you're improvising, it is new, you know.
Yeah.
But you just happen to be doing like the oldest things humans have ever done. That's
right.
You know. So
right. And in a certain sense, everything's once there was creation, everything is just a variation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all copycat. Well, yeah, that's what we do.
Just riffing on the one. Right.
Yeah, that's it. I like that one. Riffing on the one.
Yeah.
That's nice. Writing that down now.
So
how are you? I'm asking you the questions. Hey, I'm the interviewer here.
Oh, I'm fine, man. I mean, life has been complicated, but it's fine. I mean, I'm teaching and I'm working on my own music, and I'm back in Las Vegas. I'm in Las Vegas at this time, so things are different. And
what's in Las Vegas besides your mama?
I mean, that's where I grew up. You know, it's just where I grew up, and a little bit of just solace from the economic realities of the Bay Area.
It's terrible, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of tapped out, man. I mean, I had a few good years financially and a number of terrible years, you know, and it's just like, okay, like I need to sort of reassess, like, how exactly am I going to put enough bread on the table? And you know, so you know, confronting that reality.
What about teaching? Can you live off teaching?
Oh yeah, I can, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I am trying to, yeah, like you said, you know, trying to teach more adults, trying to teach more musicians, you know, that situation. So I'm working on that, and you know, we'll probably go. I mean, if I have to, I'll return to teaching. the youngsters, but it's really a last resort at this point.
No, in Las Vegas, there's so many professional musicians that I'm sure you can find some who are finally asking themselves the question of what have I been doing all these years? I wonder how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many musicians are intuitive, and at a certain point they start to wonder what's happening.
Indeed.
You know,
I read
theory isn't for everyone. Music theory isn't for everyone.
it isn't.
But
No.
guitar, but you know, everybody can be a better guitarist. Everybody can be a better player.
Yeah. Something that's been coming up in my teaching is, well, I'm curious what you'd say about this. Like, so there's music theory. Is there music reality?
The music reality is what you are doing when you shut up about music theory.
Right on. Yeah.
When you turn the theory off and turn the music on. So the question becomes, well, if theory is like illusion and dreaming and making up fairy stories, why ever learn theory?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is the same answer is for mathematics. Mathematics simply measures things, but things can't be measured.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing can be measured. Everything is in flux all the time.
No.
You can get close, and it's amazing that math gets close enough to send somebody to Mars if they don't blow up.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't measure everything, which is why there's accidents and why things don't come out right. You just can't, math won't do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with music theory. It gives you norms, it gives you ideals, it gives you a guideline about the way it works, depending on culture and personal preference, personal training, personal gift, you know. But music is different for everybody, and the theory that's appropriate for a given person is different from person to person, culture to culture, age to age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no truth in music theory. There's only asymptotes. There are only things that approach truth. Like I say, well, that's a perfect fifth and it's 3-2. Is it? No, nothing is.
Yeah.
Even a sine wave that's electronic is going to be off a beat in every 200 years. So, you know, nothing is permanent. Theory just sets up. Theory is basically statistical. It says, well, most of the people in the world hear that as an octave, and what's an octave? And well, in most cases it's 2 to 1, but then there's a variation and an approach, and you know, that music is between the notes, so there's no such thing as notes really. They're just asymptotes, things that approach perfection but never get there. And like ideals, you know, like perfection, you know, the music theory is about perfection. See, it goes this way. Oh, and what's that? Or this. You could just, I mean, it's like a child asking why. Why? The sky's blue. Why? Because the atmosphere filters, blah, blah. Why? Because the light waves or frequency, blah, blah. Why? Why? You know, how many times can you ask why? And it's the same thing about music theory. Music theory and science, this is true for all of physical sciences, doesn't speak to why. Music speaks to why. This is why. There's a feeling in that, and that's why I did it.
I guess the theory and the science is the what?
Correct. It's the how, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the what. Nobody knows what.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on.
But you can learn how. Here, see? That's a B major scale.
Pretty good. Good.
I learned how to do it, and I can show you how to do it better with your thumb in the right place.
And you're going to have to pay me.
Right. So, So that's what theory is for. It shows you how things work for most people most of the time in your culture with your history and your ear and so on. And if you're not, I tell this story a lot. Zakir Hussain. Have I told you this story about?
I don't know.
He came to this country when he was very young. I think he was 18 or 19, and he had lived a pretty sheltered life. But he came here because Pandit Pran Nath was here, because there are a lot of Sufis in San Francisco who had, or near or around San Francisco, who were studying Indian music, who were very sympathetic, who traveled to India to be with their guru and so on and so forth. And so he wanted to travel the world, and so he decided to come to San Francisco to get out of his compound. His daddy was Raga, who was one of the greatest tabla players who ever lived, and the greatest tabla player of his time. And that's what Zakir was doing from the age of 1. He's playing tabla, and probably put a tabla in his crib. As that was his life. That was his papa's life. He was a great maestro, and he was isolated. He hadn't heard Western music, and he showed up. Somebody said, "You should see." Somebody brought him to a Sufi choir rehearsal. This is a choir I led of Sufi singers, and he was very attentive. His eyes were open, and he was listening. We were singing. We were all studying with Pandit Pran Nath, and so we were, singing little raga-like things in our repertoire, and so he was very, very amazed. And he said, so I was the leader, and so he sought me out, and he said, "Allaudin, could you teach me maybe Western music? I don't understand Western music." So I said, "Sure." So after the rehearsal, I sat him down at the piano bench, and I said, "Tell me what you hear, Zakir." And he thought for a second, and he said, "Noise." And that was a great eye-opener for me. But then I started to say, okay, playing the piano so the temperament was not so evident. And he heard that, and he said, "I guess so. I guess I get it." And I said, "Well, is this like the overtones of the courage string on the tambura?" He said,
Sort of.
which is correct. And so I gave him some things to listen to. I showed him some things. I said, "Look, it's not exactly this. It's not exactly right. But if you play it this way, it's sort of, and you can do this." I was a little advanced at the time, but so about 2 or 3 weeks later, he's been listening to a lot of pop music and Western music. He sat in with the choir and played tablas with us.
Right.
And after a while, that choir was a good introduction for him, because we were singing a lot of stuff really in tune, and in raga tune, and one on a drone. And so after a while, he just began to be right in the swing of it. But it took that long for him to acculturate his ear to things that we think are absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
They're fundamental if they're tuned in just intonation, but in equal temperament, they're really out of tune to somebody who's used to hearing it really in tune. But we don't care. As we're inured to that.
Yeah.
It's like people are looking at their screen right now. They're thinking that they're looking at two people. They're not looking at two people. They're looking at a bunch of pixels on a screen, much to their detriment. And so, but it's fine. Hi, Jacob.
Howdy. Howdy. Have you experienced the opposite, where Western musicians hear real intonation and are sort of
Oh, absolutely.
uh,
Yeah. In fact, another really telling story for me is that I was going with the cellist of the Chicago Symphony for a while. She's a really good musician. She played cello. She's she played the Romantic literature, and of course she played all the orchestral literature. She's very good. She was sort of permanent member of the orchestra and right in there. Um, Her problem was that she had a sister who was a violinist who was more famous. But moving right along with the story, um, so she was over at my house, and I was just beginning to be fascinated by Indian music and by acoustics, the nature of acoustics and the nature of the overtone series. And she asked me about what is this thing called just intonation, and she just wouldn't accept the fact that equal temperament was in some fashion out of tune. So she had her cello, and I got her to play the C string, and I said, now play the first harmonic, which is the second partial, which that's the first partial. I said, play this as a harmonic, and then this harmonic, and then this harmonic, and then this harmonic. And that's the major third, which equal temperament is quite a bit sharp. And there it is in just intonation. And I got her to play that actual note on the cello rather than a harmonic, put her finger there and on the G string so she could hear it as a double stop this way. And I finally got her to tune it. She kept creeping sharp the way she'd be in tune with the Chicago Symphony because they have to play an equal temperament. And so I said, okay, now let's listen to that for a second. She said, I can't. It's out of tune. It's flat. I thought, okay, this conversation's over. I mean, if we're going to go to bed later, we're going to stop talking about just intonation. And the subject never came up again. Some people just, they don't get why it's important. They're it's like explaining Buddhism to a Catholic who's really a devout Catholic and doesn't want to hear about any other religion.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the way it goes. It's just the way it is. I know. I read the Bible, don't you?
It's been too long.
Well, I was lying, actually.
Oh, now, what about, I wound up crossing digital paths with one of your students because there was an argument about, on a music theory discussion forum, an argument erupted about how the sharp nine is actually a misnomer much of the time. That it's genuine.
Practically.
All the time, right?
No.
Not all the time, but a lot of the time, right? That's a sharp nine.
That's a sharp nine.
Yeah.
Except it's not a sharp nine. It's an augmented ninth.
Yes, that is.
Yeah, but it's because in this key there's no sharp. That's an E, right? But in this key, and I have to pick another one. A sharp key, which would be this. Oh yes, here we go. Oh yeah, this key. That's E flat here, F sharp here, so that is an augmented ninth.
Yeah,
E, F,
yeah.
right? But if I went to that is minor 10th, and not a sharp. There's no F sharp in the key of A flat. I That's an E flat chord, and that's the two forms of G. G here and G flat there.
So you've got both thirds in the mix, is what's happening,
Both
right?
thirds of the chord in the mix are both sevenths in that case of the scale in the mix. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was reading your.
Hopeless argument.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like it seems like a lot of theory discussion becomes about loyalty to various nomenclatures and names.
It's like religious discussion. You're talking about the way people are trained, the way it's convenient for them to think, and Henry Threadgill says in his autobiography, so I'm not going to worry about what I don't know. It's not bad.
I guess at a certain point, that's what you have to do, I suppose.
Well, he's a good musician. He plays great. I'm not going to give Ornette Coleman a theory lesson. Are you kidding? No way. And he's got his own.
He sure does.
Going on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody gets to explain it the way, and a dose of very well taught theory could very easily ruin an otherwise wonderful musician.
So be warned.
Be warned.
Yeah.
In the same way that a writing class might really ruin an intuitive poet.
Yeah.
You know, theory is in Harmonic Experience, the Bible, which I happen to have written, it says theory isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
It's just not. You can't. Theory classes in universities sometimes remind me of the way they feed geese in order to make pate. You know, have you ever seen that? They take these metal pipes, right? Mm-hmm. And they stuff them down the goose's neck so that the goose is immobilized, and then they stuff fatty foods down the pipe into their stomachs directly.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of education these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I hate to gloat, but institutions are in trouble, and for very good reasons.
I know. Mm-hmm.
But part of the reason isn't with them, but part of the reason is the truth is it's become a technical society, a mechanistic society, and liberal arts. Who do you know is making a good living being a liberal artist? Very few folks.
Yeah, it's a small club.
156 books are domestically published every single day. Every day, 156 books enter the market. Out of those, guess how many make back their original advance from the publisher? In other words,
one?
Better than that, 5, maybe 6, 5 or 6.
I was worried it would be less than 1%.
Well,
or less than 1.
Yeah, less than 1. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's rare. Books usually lose money.
Yeah.
Usually, most usually lose money.
Yet, I'm gonna have to write a book or a few. You know?
Yeah. Well, get a day job.
Yeah.
I was lucky. Out of the 5 books I've written, well, one hasn't had a chance to make or lose. A Shrine Thief is already broke. The most recent one is already broken even. Good. But it'll make a little money, I think. But who knows? It might catch on, it might not. Who cares to read about me? But the big book, the theory book, Harmonic Experience, that's sold 20,000 copies, and that's a little chunk of cash every 6 months.
Right on.
That's not bad. That's actually paid me something like $80 an hour for writing the book,
There you
which
go.
is it was a lot of hours, but that was the bread came in. The listening book has sold 35,000 copies, and that's paid me pretty good money too for writing the book. But most authors, but if you consider like all the revenues I've gotten from all my books, which there's 5 of them. Each one takes at least from 1 to 3 years to write. So that's 10 years of writing books, which is like giving a pint of blood every day. It's very difficult for a musician to do that. And for combined income from all those books, maybe would be what a good office job would make for me in a year. 150,000 to 160, 70,000, not even. If I combine the revenue from all the books, not even. So,
So it's a labor of love, and it's a labor for the future generations.
There's the teachers and people who write books just have a gene to transmit. Well, not everybody. I mean, fiction writers usually want to make money, but teaching books or just books that you have to write because you have something to say. You want other people to hear it.
And there's something that feels special and powerful about leaving artifacts. I mean, just like art in general, leaving some residue to be found again.
Residue is right. Of course, if you get cremated, you leave residue too.
That's true.
So the question is, I mean, I've thought a lot about this. I don't think there's an artist who produces stuff who doesn't. And incidentally, the blowback, what's the word I want, the counter revolution to that idea is people who make disappearing art. Art doesn't leave a trace, like a happening or something, Of course, it gets reported in the newspaper, so they are defeated in their plan.
If there's any documentation whatsoever.
Anything, yeah. So, I mean, you can go out into the woods and scream, and probably that would, but then the animals would change. See, so you're stuck. So, I've done a lot of thinking about it, and we don't want to die. There's something in us that wants to perpetuate the stream that's going through us. So for most people, that takes the form of having kids. And so you have kids and you train them, and they carry forward your line, right? Your line won't die. And for the artist, that gets sublimated into art. You want the force and the wisdom, if any, or the experience, or whatever is accrued. You want to pass that on in a way that's, and in a way it's pretty egotistical, or it's you don't want to die, you want to live forever. And so in a way it's selfish, but in a way it's not. For instance, I read Coleman Barks's translations of Rumi, the poet, and they help me live. They actually do. I listen to Mozart and Beethoven, and they help me live. They do. Miles Davis has been an icon for me. A goal I'll never reach, but an inspiring one. And the same thing is true of many writers, painters, musicians, many musicians, living and dead, including the ones who write deathless scores, Beethoven's Ninth, blah, blah, blah. I practice Bach every day.
It's healthy.
Yeah.
I remember one lesson with you where you you talked about how sort of this, if you're making art, if you're making work, there is this inevitable dealing with vanity or self-absorption, or some sort of, you have to sort of reckon with that, that you think you're so important and your work is so important that you're actually giving it, that it's important to you to do this you know um, and yeah, I don't know, that's a funny thing, the potential self-absorption of the artist and sort of the inevitability of it. But I guess how do you temper it in such a way so it doesn't become psychopathological and
Well, there's a meme that's surprisingly well accepted that says that art is self-expression. And I don't think that's true. That's like saying that meditation is self-expression. I don't think it's true. I think that in order to have transcendent experiences, that in order to transcend the self, you have to have a self to transcend. So somebody who is scarcely hanging on to their lives, doesn't have a good sense of themselves, or has a weak sense of themselves, is going to have trouble finding some kind of spiritual experience. They better find out who they are before they seek. You have to seek yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same thing is true with artists. I think you have to know who you are. I think you have to have expressed yourself sufficiently so that you realize that, yes, you have a self that expresses, but at a certain point, the expression doesn't take the form of expression, what's in you coming out. It takes the form of transparency. What comes through you passes on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different paradigm. It's not yourself that's being expressed. You're much like a pasta machine, that makes pasta. You put in the dough and you turn the crank, and it turns out this pasta on a wheel with holes in it. But the wheel, you can turn the wheel and get different kinds of pastas, or you can replace the wheel, right? Well, everybody has their own version of being the wheel, but the experience is the dough. It comes through you, and then you're a sieve, like, you have your own being, and it goes through your sieve and it goes out to the world.
Yeah.
And so what did you do? You're just sitting there, and there's somebody's grinding, and your shape is being passed on. Well,
Look what happened. Look at this.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do. I'm not doing anything. I really tell you, I'm not doing anything. I'm just, there's energy that comes through, but I'm, 80 years of intensive training, okay? To be a pianist, to be a musician, to understand composition, to understand improvisation, to teach for endless hours, and to better understand what the process is, plus lots and lots of concertizing. So, and you can tell when the red light's on, whether you're thinking about yourself or whether it's just passing through. If you're recording or at a concert, I seem to be at my best at concerts because people are expecting to receive something.
Mm-hmm.
I just give up and I just let it come.
I like this idea of transparency, sort of a clarity in the making of whatever the art is.
Well, I did an experiment with that. I made an album called Transparencies, which is actually the best solo album I've made. It's recent, last few years. And the experiment was, okay, I'm going to go to the recording studio, and I know what it's like to be transparent. I've had those experiences where now I drop in. I'm old. I know how to do it. But at that time, I was just wondering whether I could actually just do this in a fucking recording studio, And so I recorded 5 hours of music, and I really, if it wasn't happening, I'd stop.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was happening, I'd keep going until I thought, oh no, you're figuring it out. Stop figuring it out. Don't figure things out. Just play.
Mm-hmm.
And after 5 hours of playing over, I think 6 days, it all culled down to 5 hours of some playing phrases, sometimes 3 or 4 minutes long, if I was lucky. Sometimes 45 seconds of something that was really transparent. And that got cut down to 55 minutes. So that's a 5-to-1 cut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I do it now, it's closer to a 2-to-1 cut. But, you know, I'm at the end of life. I should have learned something. You know, I feel like I had a friend long ago who had to give a speech at his 80th birthday party.
Okay.
Did I tell you this ever?
Mm-hmm.
And he was my car mechanic. He was really a good mechanic. And with Midwestern guys, kind of, you know, pawing the earth with his foot. Oh, well, shucks kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very mature, very, very mellow person. And he didn't know what to say. So he got up at his 80th birthday party. He says, well, I just turned 80, and I figure if I want to do something with my life, I'd best get started. That's how I feel. At 80, at touching 87 here. Let me do something. I excuse myself I want to do something with a light in back of me.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
That should be better.
Cool. So, in your book, there's a nice section where you talk about writing the written word.
This is the book we're talking about. Yeah, there we go. All right, double trouble here. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Any way you turn it, it comes out right. Oh, whoop! Here's my favorite page.
Oh, that's a good page. I like this one too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. About writing.
Yeah, and you say, what do you say? You say to be concise is the essence of good writing. Do you think is that the same situation for music making?
Well, it depends on your definition of can I read the little chapter? I mean the little heading.
Yeah.
So this the poet Jalaluddin Rumi was a great Persian poet, the best probably known foreign poet to the West. Was translated starting in the 1980s, by Coleman Barks, who's a poet in his own right, taught at university level for years and years, 30 years, and is an extraordinary translator of transcendent poetry. Mostly Rumi set out to translate the bulk of Rumi's output, which is prodigious. And we became friends. I had the chutzpah to call him up after I read his first translation of Rumi. I wanted to set those songs. I set about 50 of those poems into music. And I said, "You are my brother." And despite that conceit, we became friends and have remained friends. So it was I'm really glad I did that. You don't usually call people up and say, "Hey man, I'm your brother," but anyhow, I did, and it worked that time. So he lived in Athens, Georgia, where he taught at the University of Georgia in Athens, and so we were. I spent the weekend with him at that visit, and we walked around the campus, and I attended one of his classes, and I asked him to critique some of my poetry, and he did. And he cut out a whole bunch of stuff and changed a few words. And here's one example. I wrote a poem about Bach dying, and he was hallucinating. This is fiction. He was hallucinating when he was dying that he was playing the lute for a lover, and as he suffers his final small stroke, Bach hallucinates himself at his own bedside as the passionate adolescent he once was. Lute on lap, as he is composing a love ballad, he inadvertently plucks an open string, and here's the last line of the poem, an offhand twang that rides out the window and up into the bright sky. Coleman changed up into the bright sky to read up into white glare. So the line now reads, an offhand twang that rides out the window and up into the white glare. There are so many reasons his is a better line of poetry. I can't think of them all at once. For starters, the is omitted instead of the bright sky up into white glare. The is omitted, so 5 words are now 4. White is a more visual descriptor than bright. Also, glare adds a more specific and affective quality to sky. So far, 2 better descriptors and 1 less word.
Mm-hmm. Concise. And
it
more
was
meaning.
Concise, and more meaning, right.
Mm-hmm.
From now, we're sitting in front of his fire, which is a wood fire in his fireplace. It's cold, it's winter time. From time to time, the fire burns low and needs replenishing. Proper tinder is secured. Some aging pages from his trash. Toss onto the pyre. Toss, toss, toss. But hold! What is this? The poet spies a thick sheaf of poems from an unsolicited source and scans it for a moment, tosses it into the flames, watches it burn, snatches it back, and reads a few lines from the burning page. With his right hand, he holds the page so the flames crawl left to right. As the words disappear, Coleman reads what remains with increasing delight. The poem is getting better and better. Concision by fire. Now, the poet, reading louder and louder, is proclaiming single-word masterpieces. In triumphant baritone, the poetic remnants are finally consigned to the flames and fresh logs placed over them. It is smoky, it is funny, and the point is made. Poor poet, says Coleman. So that was a good lesson I learned. I mean, it's more than concision. The ultimate in concision is an empty page. Minimalism, maximal minimalism, you might say. That's on the same level as 33 minutes, 3 minutes and 33 seconds, or what is it, of silence?
It's four minutes, but yes.
4 minutes and 33 seconds. Well, 3 minutes and 33 seconds is a better piece. But anyway, it's on that, anything is art that you claim is art. You can take an empty frame and start throwing it down on the ground or in the woods, and what's in the frame is art, because you've framed it. Anything you frame is art. This is art, this is art, this is art, this is art, anything. So art is a very, very slippery concept. And it means as many things. It's like listening to music. What's the proper way to listen to music? And I say it's the way you listen. That's what's proper for you. And if you want to fix it, fix it. There's a lot of ways of expanding your notion of what proper listening is, but the way you're hearing it right now is proper for you, or else you wouldn't be doing it.
Indeed.
Yeah, so, even, any level of teaching is very risky. You can't really teach anything to anybody unless they're asking you questions.
Well, you got to educe, right? To educate is to educe from the student.
Yeah, you have to figure out what they're asking. Sometimes they don't know what they're asking, but a good teacher knows. You've hit pay dirt, so to speak, if you say something to the student and they suddenly wake up. And the reason they wake up is because you know what they're asking. You know what they're needing to hear, and you say it. And they don't even say, how did you know to say that? They just wake up. That takes some experience, some insight, and some transparency. Yeah, it's true. What'd you think of my book?
I enjoyed it very much, man. I enjoyed it a lot.
How come?
Well, it was... Well, it's so funny. Because I just so happen to be reading Hazrat Inayat Khan right now. I'm reading The Art of Being and Becoming. And I wasn't aware how close you were to that lineage, really. Right? Like, didn't...
I'm close to that lineage. And in the book, I quote the one quote from Inayat Khan that really, really has...
Towards the end, right?
Life. Huh?
It's towards the end of the book, isn't that right?
Well, several places in the book. I keep coming back to it. The place where it's introduced is where I start to bridle at the word spirituality. I just can't stand the word, and I think it's divisive. And let's see, it is here. Yeah, here it is. I'm going to read this, can I?
Yeah, please.
I can't write anymore until I speak of a particular word, a vexing word, a word that seems stuck to us like a scrap of double-sided tape. Glasses break. I think that everything in this world is sacred, or holy, or spiritual, or that nothing is. I can usually shake off these terms and find others less exclusive. The especially sticky word, however, is spiritual. I guess folks use it to describe some aspect of refinement, but I find the term divisive. I cannot find a meaningful boundary between what is spiritual and what is not. Isn't everything both high and low, depending on the view and the lens? Or am I a bleeding liberal linguist? A century ago, Inayat Khan wrote, "The whole of life in all of its aspects is one single music. The real spiritual attainment is to tune oneself to the harmony of this perfect music." I'll repeat it because it's quite a sentence. The whole of life in all of its aspects is one single music. The real spiritual attainment is to tune oneself to the harmony of this perfect music. This lets me feel a little more comfortable using the word spiritual. So what does that mean, to tune oneself to the harmony of this perfect music? I think when you take the sentence as something to investigate and you ask the question, what does that mean, to tune oneself to this perfect, what does that mean? I think the seeking, the wanting to know what that means, that's the attunement. Mm-hmm. Rumi says, when you look for God, God is in the look of your eye. It's in the looking. That's what spiritual means. You're looking, you're seeking for something. And it's the seeking, it's the path itself that is what you're on and what you're doing, and that's what you know. You're seeking something, you're looking for something. So, okay, if you want to call that spiritual, fine.
That word is also sort of lost. I'm not a fan of that word anymore. It's
good. It's like the word jazz.
Sure. Yeah, it becomes. I guess it becomes more and more. Meaningless.
Speaking of which, what's the difference between a blues musician and a jazz musician? Give up?
I do. What is the difference?
A blues musician plays 3 chords for 1,000 people, and a jazz musician plays 1,000 chords for 3 people.
Yeah.
I love that joke. It's so true.
It is very true. Gosh. At the end of the book, you mentioned something like you were sort of trying to, turn your stories and everything you've learned and are sharing into a practical philosophy. You use that term, a practical philosophy. What would you say is your practical philosophy?
To tune oneself to this perfect music. In a word or in a phrase. A practical philosophy is something that you've thought about for a long time, and it results in action that works, that helps you and helps you help others. That's what I would consider practical, something that actually aids you to be centered enough and comfortable enough with yourself so that you can become transparent and you can aid others in whatever you do in period in life. That becomes very difficult for people who work for corporations and basically lie 8 hours a day or swallowed some sort of lie in order to put bread on the table.
Yeah, that would be tough, man.
That would be very tough. And we're musicians and we're lucky. We're poor, but we get along and we get to do what we want. We don't have to lie. People have to lie for a living is very, very tough. I'd rather have a house cleaning job, clean toilets, than be in marketing for hairspray.
Yeah. But if we tune ourselves too well, we might not play music anymore.
Well, that's true. And I look forward to the day where I don't have to practice anymore. But meanwhile, it's back to the drawing board.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Inayat Khan stopped playing music eventually, right?
Well, not to his own desire.
Oh, okay.
He never stopped playing music. He squeezed it in whenever we could. But his gurus at the time, his teachers,
Uh-huh.
including his whole family, comes from one of those Hindu lineages where the entire family is musician, like Bach.
Yeah.
It's just you get a son, that's the musician, and often a daughter also. So she can sing Vraja and he'll sing raga. So Inayat Khan was a very promising singer, and it was on his way. But at the same time, he had an extraordinary intellect,
Yeah.
and was at a very young age, in his teens, consumed with the mysticism of various religions around the world. And he was surrounded by Sufi masters in India, and his primary guru said, "You're a promising musician, Anayat, and I want you to leave India, go to the Sorbonne in France, learn Western ways, and spread the message of Sufism to the West, which is hungry for it." And of course, he was angry and crestfallen. He thought he'd die without music. But he did what his guru told him to, and he became educated and semi-fluent in European languages and English. And he was pretty good in English, but also German and French. It was just an amazing mind that could do that stuff. And he was, by the time he started writing and teaching in his 20s, it was a dictionary, it was a library of spiritual writing for well, there I go again, of, we'll say, mystical writing for the many religions. Most religions have a mystical core at their root. If you get past the power, if you get past the power plays, and into the inner thought of it, including religions that seem miles apart, they all go toward the one. And so he knew that. He intuitively sought it out and sought it out and sought it out. It was really well read. And at a certain point, he started to teach Sufism in the West. But he always had a room wherever he was staying so he could practice tabla and practice vina, which he played, and singing. He was a good singer. And, right in the lineage, the raga lineage of the Rajas, of the Hindis. So he was right in there. And he became a teacher, and he gained followers, and people listened to him. And he said fabulously pertinent and practical things, and gave people practices that worked for them. He really read and understood the Western mind. It's very different from the Indian mind, or mindset, I guess I should say, and became a very well-known teacher, and he died young at 45. And he wrote, I think, 11 books.
Wow, I didn't know that. 11 of
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, they're all sitting in my library.
Wow.
And one called Music of the Power of Sound.
Indeed. Yeah.
And that's being read by a lot of musicians these days. Like any spiritual teaching, you take what you can use and you leave the rest. You know, it's just like a buffet, and Nikon is a buffet. And he was a person of his time, naturally. He hated saxophones because he thought they encouraged licentious behavior, which in a way was true in 1910. You know? But well, I guess 1920 when he wrote that. But you know, he was the person of his time, and you know, Indian men still walk ahead of their wives. It's what Indian men do. So you can't escape that. But he was a highly developed person, and it turns out that he was more useful to the world as an intellect investigating the mystical than and articulating how he viewed the world than he would be as a musician. And so his guru knew this when Nag Khan was young enough to send him off to college in the West. And so that's what he was, Paris educated. And he became one of the truly great teachers. Yeah. So like that. And he continued to practice his whole life, but he didn't concertize. He played for his intimate circle. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
You got any concerts coming up?
I don't. I'm pretty sheltered. I have an autoimmune
Of
disease. It's
course.
called myasthenia gravis, and I wear masks when I go to a grocery store. I'm pretty much the only one who does, except the people who work there. And so I don't take private students anymore. It's impractical because I have like two local students. Everybody's all over the world now. It's about 9 different countries. It's just like weird. But the books have gotten around the world, especially Harmonic Experience. And
Maybe you should do an online concert. That'd be cool.
I could. I do. That's Harmonic Experience. That's my dog-eared copy. I play for my students all the time.
Yeah.
I say, "Can I play for you?" And I do.
Mhm.
So, Jacob, can I play for you?
Please do.
I will. We should play a duet, but it's not very practical.
Oh, but it'd be fun. We can just play we're just the Zoom delay pedal is all we got.
Yeah, the Zoom delay pedal. That's good. I like that. This is the experiment I do. Clap when I say 1, 2, 3, clap. Okay.
On 3 or
No, 1, 2, 3, clap. So 1, 2, 3. To me, that sounded like this.
wow. So we got a
Now you
0.7
do it.
seconds. Okay.
Now
One,
you-
1, 2, 3, clap. Yeah.
Dead simultaneous for me.
Second late over here.
Yeah. Oh, more than a second here.
See,
And
so
that's the other thing.
let's see if I can
Different.
trick you though. Let's see if I can trick you. Try to do it one more time.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. That sounded like boom, ching.
Yeah.
You can't spool electrons. I'm playing the piano.
Yeah, play us something, man.
I'm putting these things off.
Thank you, Allaudin.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Rock and roll, man. Well, we're at an hour 20.
No, you're kidding. Feels
No,
like 20 minutes.
it goes quick, man. Yeah, we're at it's 2:18. Um, I like reading. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, ask me a question. Ask me a
Well,
question I can't answer.
okay. Well, how? I don't know if I can do that. Well, you know what?
This is fun.
The sound is the teacher. You use this phrase. How is sound the teacher? Why? If sound's the teacher, I don't need to come see you. I don't need. I'm going to be out of business myself. What do you mean?
Well,
Yeah.
Let's just put it this way. All of your senses and your body are really mirrors, smoke and mirrors. They take in information. You can think of it in terms of information theory. It comes in, and you decode it, and you interpret it, and it comes out in action or in feeling or in something. It has some kind of affect or result. Whether it's conscious or not, but any impression you have comes in. Like if somebody's sleeping and somebody's going like this to them, they might not be conscious of that, but it's still going in. So, and then we perceive it in a certain way, we interpret it in a certain way. It's either conscious or not, mostly unconscious. If you are conscious of everything that happened to you,
That'd be
God.
That'd be pretty difficult. Yeah, that'd be pretty difficult.
Yeah, pretty hard. He'd definitely be up there with the angels and the wings and harps. So, so you have to realize that in order for the information to be interpreted, it has to be coded into neuronal, little electricity in the brain.
Brain wiggles.
Wiggles. Yeah, and frequencies we can't even know about, and so, and then it means something, and of course, everything. We can hardly imagine what's lost in the translation. Even when you measure something on a microphone and think if you're making a measurement, you're losing a lot of it. So there's always more there than you can hear.
Mm-hmm.
Any sound and any sense, touch, smell, taste, anything, eroticism, anything. Not to mention vision. What did I leave out? So it comes in, and you get a piece of it, good enough. Or I mean, we think we're hearing, we think we're seeing. Actually, we're not seeing even. You see a little dot, you see a little teeny frame in front of you. Everything else is guesswork by the brain. And who knows that the same thing is true of, I know that when you're just hearing this, you weren't hearing four parts, you were hearing the chunk. Right? You're just hearing chunks. What about this? Let's see, I'll do it this way. That was in 7 parts. Are you hearing 7 parts? You're not hearing 7 parts. You're just hearing the chunk. Boom, go chunk, 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 chunk. Whereas actually that's 4 of the guys. Plus, plus, plus. You're not hearing all that. And if I add this, or much less. You're hearing chunks. You're just not, and even that is a chunk. You don't know what's there. So the more you listen, the more you hear. That's why sound is the teacher. Because if you seek, you'll get more. Every time I listen to the pieces I've been practicing for 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 years, every time I play it, I hear more.
There is more. Yeah.
There's more. There's always more. So you could expand that wisdom, which is really kind of platitudinous, and say that experience is the teacher, and sound is a particular kind of experience that we musicians are drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And especially harmonic sound, which means that there's some kind of traceable relationship between notes, you know. And even the idea of a prolonged tone, a sustained tone, that's not in nature. You almost never hear a sustained tone in nature. It's always moving around. Well, the truth is, if you look at the neuronal paths of this note, it's moving around too. It's just moving around in such a very small way. There's actually, that's A440. There's no 440 hair. There's just a lot of hairs, and they peak at 440. The little hairs in the inner ear, you know. So we don't know what my hearing is changing with age, and the high sounds sound sharp, and the low sounds sound flat until I contextualize that.
Really?
So I really don't know what note that is unless I go, oh, now I hear it's a B flat. I mean, this is weird, but I'm sure there's some incipient form of that exists in the hearing process. You need the context to make sense. It's certainly true of language, but it's true of everything. Something can smell delicious if you're in a gourmet restaurant, but if you're not, it sounds like something's burning on the stove. It smells like something's burning on the stove. You need a context for it to make sense. And so that's always happening with sound too, because we never hear anything. Context determines everything.
It's very fascinating how, you know, a lot of the study with the lattice and exploring the feeling tones of different areas on the lattice.
This is a tone lattice for people that don't know that.
And if you're not familiar with that, there's different D's on the lattice. There's different E's, and you know, it feels like when you investigate those different spaces, I mean, it's like you're playing with the substratum of perception, because even though
absolutely, you know, I mean, even when you're doing this, remember Zakir saying, "What do you hear, Zakir? Noise."
Yeah.
But after, you know, some weeks of immersion in American pop, or blues, it's right there.
Yeah, it rounds out. I'm reminded of, I don't know if you told me this story, but like a group of very well-known Balinese musicians came to the States and went and saw a Beethoven string quartet, and they hated it, or they were missing the wobble of the game tuning, right? It's too like this. Where's the undulation? Where's the
you know, I went to Bali. I spent some time there, and this was quite a while ago in the late '80s. And I wrote the listening book there, and every village had its gamelan, and the villages is generally built on high land and the ridges. The whole island goes like this, and along the ridges you walk, and there's villages, and so you can hear across the ridges to the villages. That's quite amazing the way sound carries, and you can. If you walk along a ridge, you'll come across a village and another village and another village, and every village has a gamelan, and they usually practice in the afternoon. But there's always some gamelan music, something going on somewhere, and sometimes just a log drum being played. But it's amazing. I'm probably not that way anymore. It's been overrun, but less. But back then, which was, what is that, 35 plus years ago, there really was a village life up in the mountains, away from the seacoast where the tourists were. Now the tourists are everywhere, but so there was a lot of quiet, and I didn't really get gamelan music when I first came, but I want to investigate it, and I made friends with the gamelan players in a bood in the closest town where I lived, and we lived outside of that, and I didn't get it because the bars they're metallophones, and so they're metal. They're like bells, and the fundamental is sort of buried in there. It's there, and then it takes a tube like vibes,
Yeah.
that takes a tube to bring out the fundamental, and they had those tubes, but there's a really lot of overtones that are not what we consider harmonic. I mean, you might have a fundamental that goes this and something like that going on above it. What? What?
It's frazzling.
It's frazzling, exactly. And so I was walking around and trying to make sense of this music and apply it to my culture, understand what the ratios were. What were the ratios? What's the harmonic sense of this? And I had to give that up for a while, and I'd be walking around and I'd just hear the gamelan music coming from different places, and it becomes kind of unconscious for a while. And after I was there for 3 or 4 weeks, my brain began to get very loose. I got to be very transparent. Somehow, my brains were loosened up, and then I got it. Oh, it loosens up your brains. Not that I couldn't think logically, I could still do multiplication in my head, but that wasn't the point. I was just kind of everywhere in the soundscape at once, like a gamelan bar. There's as many ways of listening to music as there are listeners to music. There's no such thing as a music, which is the way it is. Everything is different for everybody. And you come to respect that. What can we poor musicians do? The best we can.
Try our darndest, man. Try our darndest.
And if somebody listens, good. If somebody doesn't listen, fine. Yeah.
So your insight into Bach's genius is that he's able to, what's the term you use? Sonic audio rotation or audio permutation. And
Yeah, well, there is such a thing as audiation, which means hear that in your head. Okay, that's audiation, right? But to take a harmonic model like let's a model for 4 parts of it, or like this, or like I mean, there's thousands, and to be able to hear that in every octave, in every permutation of voicing, chord by chord, sometimes it's an eighth note changing, dang, 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 all at once. And from that, you weave your polyphonic fabric. So we think Bach, oh, that's polyphony. Not so fast. We think Bach, and he had this way, like engineers. If I show this to a mechanical engineer and say, imagine that rotating in your mind. I mean, I can't even imagine it. But they can see this in their minds. Well, Bach could do that with harmonic models. And for him, that's low-hanging fruit for being able to find notes that makes the polyphony work. So, like every composer, you do the simultaneity at the same time as you do the linearity. But Bach had this particular genius for hearing the avant-garde harmony of the time, which was pretty far out. It pretty much covered the tonal compass, everything. I mean, there's not much that escaped him. I mean, weird shit that we wouldn't think of. See, I don't think I can do that. Oh yeah. How does that go? There's one sequence that I just could not imagine how it worked. I really had to work on it to figure it out. And he just, this is one of his pieces. Let's see. Yeah, how could that be? That's it. Oh, that's not just chromatic. There's a lot of harmony going on there. Let's see. That's how you get from here. There's a lot of chords missing.
And what are you playing there? Can you name what you're doing?
Okay, A7 to D minor to F minor. Now I'm going to leave out all the in-between steps.
Very cool.
And now the next one, F minor to G7. That's for 4 to 5 in C minor. G7 to E flat minor. Give me shelter. Come on, you can't do that.
Like his movement in major thirds. Is that right? No, it's in whole steps. That's A7 to G7 to F7. I see.
Yeah. But here's the trick. It's not 9 to 8 whole steps. When you do the lattice, it's 10 to 9 whole steps.
Ah, that's cool.
And I thought, okay, that's the only sequence I could find that was really made it in that small whole tone, the minor whole tone they call it. And cool. It's like, whoa, is that beautiful? It's just gorgeous. Bach knew that. Come on, I'm coming along 200 years later saying, wow. Yeah, and I know harmony, and it's like, what? How do you know that? He didn't even read my book.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, to be able to be conscious of all that seems, astounding.
Yeah, well, he was just a harmonic genius, and of course he was a polyphonic genius too, but they really were equal, and that's what I'm trying to get. I mean, my whole book is about getting people to get off of their horse about perfect fifths being what harmony is about. No, it's perfect fifths and major thirds, 3 to 2 and 5 to 4. Those are really basic, up and down. And then you got a lattice, just like this.
There you go.
And there you go. But that was a very unpopular theory until recently. Everybody was perfect fifths, Pythagorean. Schenker, the one harmony book, which is so extensive and useful, is still quite limited because everything's fifths. If it's not fifths, it's not real.
Or the Lydian chromatic concept also.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's funny, I've heard people argue that, the idea of reciprocal tones is like this argument that since they don't have a physical reality to them the way an overtone does, that it's not real or it's not worth investigating.
So this is real. And this is unreal.
That's not real.
That is not real.
That was unreal. That was unreal.
Well, it was unreal.
Well, I mean, it's funny because, like, I was explaining this to students and sort of saying, like, does a shadow not exist? Does a reflection not exist? Is that an accurate analogy though? Like,
well, in a way, but it's one of those questions that the thing really wrong is that the question is wrong. How do you know what's real, man? You have no idea. You have no idea what's real and unreal. What about your dreams? Are they real or unreal? You wake up from a nightmare screaming, oh, that was unreal. Go back to sleep. You know, what about your unconscious hatred of your mother or your father or your whatever? You know, oh, that's unreal, you know. So close up all your psychiatric offices. It's unreal. It's not there. It doesn't exist. This doesn't exist because when I hear that, well, let's see. Because F isn't in the overtone series.
Yeah.
You know how I explain that?
Oh.
Hope I don't offend anybody. Okay, children, cover your eyes. All right. So, when you sing, I'm playing F, I'm playing C, and I'm singing G. Boom. Okay? You know this, Jacob. And so I'm in the overtone series of C. That's real. Right? Right? It's just, the notes are in the air. And I have the capacity in my brain to understand boom, the 3 to 1. In the same way the string has the capacity in itself to divide into 3 parts and make that harmonic. Don't ask why, but it's true about strings. It's true about us. There's not a musical culture that doesn't somehow refer to, whether they tune it or detune it purposely, a perfect fifth sounds right to everybody. Wires do that. With the electric wires do that. It's in the air. It's a part of life for practically everybody. So it seems to be statistical true for humans. And you're just like a cowboy. This is the horse you climb on. Boom. Same with all the overs. Big go 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 ga gee gee. Those are all overtones. Those are very. They're right there. They're ratios of beats together that we understand. We understand 3 to 2. Right? It's a dance rhythm. So yeah. So don't ask why. We just do. We get it. We interpret that somehow, and it's meaningful to us. So now, what about F? Bong, there's hardly a culture that doesn't have that note in it. But that note is not in the overtone series. So it's unreal, right? But what about this? Dong. That's a C. I'm singing F. Bong. Here's the overtone series of F. So I'm singing this. So now I'm in the key of C. And I'm singing F. I'm hearing C as the tonic. And so the tonic, C, is inside of me. I'm singing a note that contains the generating tone, the God of music for right now is C, because I'm in that key. God. Okay? So I'm creating something that was the creator. This is not the same as climbing on a horse.
No, it is not.
It is not.
It is not.
And so here's the thing. Children, go to bed. What's the difference between being in something and having something in you? Here's a hint.
Very good. It all comes back to sex. But
well, sex comes back to a dual principle that seems to be pretty flagrantly universal in the universe. You know, it's yin and yang. You have a positive and a negative charge, and a lot of stuff that's around that. but there does seem to be some kind of duality from which the whole is made. You can always somehow, in the prison of the body, because we're alive, we're in a body, we get the difference between up and down, we get the difference between hot and cold, we get all the extremes, everything's on a spectrum. And so even this is difficult to learn. This was not in Homo sapiens 100,000 years ago, probably, certainly not 200,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're older than that as a species. Just a sustained tone is a big deal. You have to train yourself for that to be real. That's something, but of course it's real. Because we hear it. That's all. We make it real in ourselves, and that is going to come pretty close thereafter. And you're in a cave and you go like this. You hear overtones. You realize there's more sound in sound than there is in the generator of the sound. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So that's just the way it goes all the way down the line. The more you listen, the more you hear. If you just play notes that are basically overtones or overtones of overtones, can be explained that way. If you play nothing but reciprocals, that is the notes which contain C but are not in the C overtone series, you get Now, if you think that's unreal and this is real,
I don't know what to tell you.
and if you think that, you can get your money back at the door. Goodbye.
Yeah, I remember the first time I read that in Harmonic Experience, like a long time ago. The reality of how the perfect fourth doesn't show up in the overtone series, but you flip the script, the tonic shows up in the overtone of F immediately, and that was a big moment. I was like, God damn, that sort of there's a paradigmatic shift. Yeah.
You know the story I don't think it's in the book. There's a mystic composer named Dane Rudyard. You ever heard that name? He was a very interesting man. He wrote a book in the 1940s called Planetary Consciousness. He was the person that invented that as a popular meme. It took a couple generations for it to really have meaning, but he developed that in the 30s and 40s. He was a composer, not a really great composer, but he was a composer. He knew music well. Mm-hmm. And when I was about 30, in my early 30s someplace, and studying Sufism, somebody who was in the Sufi community said, "Do you know Dane Rudyard?" I said, yeah, I read this book, Planetary Consciousness. It's very interesting. He said, well, he's sitting in the South Bay, like an hour drive from where I was at the time. And I'm his secretary. And if you would like an audience with him, I'll make an appointment and you can go see him. And I had read his books on music. He was pretty interesting. He wasn't as versed in music as he was in theology, but and ontology. He was really an intellectual, but he was an intellectual who wrote music, so he knew something about music and music theory, and he had his ideas about it. I forget what they were, but I know they were developed. He knew what he was talking about. And so I thought, okay, I'll go. I have a question for him. Because I thought this through about fifths and fourths. And why can we all sing this an F? Mm-hmm. We can all sing an E flat and an A flat. These notes aren't in the overtone series. Yeah. It must be that we hear the tonic in ourselves in some fashion. And so I was shown into his room. He was an enormous man, a Dane, and he looked like a Viking or something. I mean, he was really huge, and there was a cushion at his feet. So I sat there, or maybe it was a low ottoman, a low chair, and I sat there like, sufficiently cowed. And he said, "You have a question?" And I said, "Yes." Is a fifth the same as a fourth? And he said, "Is a man the same as a woman?" And I said, "Thank you, sir." And that was the interview.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got it then. It's a male-female principle. It's just it's the really, really basic. Well, I shouldn't say male-female. It's a
Yin yang, light,
masculine,
dark.
feminine. Yeah, masculine, feminine is better.
I got you.
Yang. Yeah, the whole thing. Here's the mercy, compassion. Yeah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Yang, yin.
Right on.
It's everywhere you look. Breathe in, breathe out.
Can't escape it. No.
You can't escape it. It's just part of the way things are. Light waves go, ooh. That's the way sounds go, whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you can get to such fundamental talk when you talk about music and how it works and how it must work in the organism. I couldn't go any further with my music theory because I realized it's just not about something that you can quantify or explain that happens out in the air. It's really your interpretation of it. It's how you think about it, and that's a subject for psychoneuroacoustics. The acoustics part is the overtone theories and how sound behaves in a measurable way by a scientist. The neuro part is what are your neurons doing with the information? Where do they go in the brain? We know that it goes into the brain, it splits into many, many parts, and then comes together in your consciousness, and you say, "Oh, that's an A." So we know that it's very complex. We don't know how it really works. And the psycho part is, so what? Why does this sound different than this? Why does anything sound different than anything else? Well, I don't know. Nobody knows. There's hardly literature that's really informed about it, because you got to get somebody who's a real maestro musician, and a real genius of a scientist who knows those three disciplines, and that hasn't shown up yet. Yeah. But you have to have a good musician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't just pick the randos.
Yeah, no, you can't play. You can't just rely on the scientist who plays bass in a rock band. That's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think eventually, if you're genuinely studying music theory, you're eventually studying consciousness.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so it's interesting that you have to get so fundamental in order to understand what's happening to you. And that's why it's experience. It's not a thing. It's not harmonic theory. It's harmonic experience. Yeah. And so ultimately you learn what you can, what's valuable to you, or what you think is going to be valuable to you at the time, and then just play your instrument. Open your mouth and sing, and that's the real music. But so I say it's interesting that you get down to fundamentals, but it's not surprising at all. Yeah. Because music puts us in a zone that is like some kind of heaven world, and we have no idea what's happening. Yeah. But if you're really listening to music, you just disappear.
Yeah. It's the best. I think I've told many people it's better than great sex when it's like really working.
Now,
you don't think so?
let's not get too hyperbolic now.
I mean, I think there have been times when I've been playing music with certain people, and it's just so. It's like soul sex. It's just like it's the
That's
music.
right.
The music is so alive and so effortlessly, just effortlessly working. It's just like it's
Okay,
just it's one of the best. It's one of the best things.
let's leave it here, Jacob. Let's say that music and sex are marvelous examples of tuning to the one perfect music.
Very good. We can leave it at that.
Marvelous examples.
Cool.
So nice.
Very nice. Yes. Right on. Well, thank you, Allaudin.
See you, my friend. That was fun.
Yeah, I'll see you. I'll see you. I'll see you later. I'm gonna like put the two things together, and I'll send you a link before I make it public if you want to check it out. Okay.
I trust you, but I will.
Okay.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
All right. I love you, man. I'll catch you later.
I love you too, Jacob. Thanks very much for the opportunity, and thank you, listeners, for listening and paying attention.
Right on.
Okay.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.